Please rise for silent invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Scott, you knew I needed an extra long prayer.
Give me a
that
couple
time.
extra seconds.
Yeah.
No, I needed that.
Always during budget season, get a little longer.
It included you. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Ford.
Present.
Councilmember Bastian.
Here.
Councilmember Silver.
Here.
Vice Mayor Tremont.
Here.
Mayor Burnett.
Here. In lieu of Jake Johansson, we have Mr. Alan Rosen here. Alan, why don't you tell us what we're about to embark on here?
Certainly, Mayor. Alan Rosen, Assistant City Manager. This is the second budget workshop. We're going to focus on the general fund, kind of get more in depth with the information that was provided last week. And there is some additional information based on the feedback we received from council last week. So you should see that in some of the presentations. One of them being, there was some discussion last week about some of the a la carte items having an effect on the base budget. So the amount that you will see in the a la carte menu should be net of whatever that change would be, if that decision is made. We didn't want to specifically touch the stuff in the system because it's very cumbersome, as you know, to go into the system, out of the system, and every time there's a change, it takes hours of work to try to do that. So we have that on the spreadsheets. When the final decisions are made, we'll put that back into the system to reflect the actual will of the council.
Okay. With that, Dr. Scott Niels, you're on, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Scott Niels, Chief Financial Officer and Finance Director for the City of Port Orange. It is a real pleasure to be here. I would also like to thank my two trustee associates, Lupe and Kevin, for their outstanding work in helping me get this done.
At least one of them smiling.
Okay,
we got them
They're both still working.
Yes.
So without further ado, we'd like to present with you some updates of the information we had from last week's presentation. The goal for today is still the same. It's to provide information for you to evaluate our general fund budget and in preparation for a vote next Tuesday on the 30th, where you will set the max millage rate for this year. And as far as the max millage rate, it can be lowered, but it cannot be raised.
Will be lowered, you said?
It can be lowered.
You said will be lowered? Okay.
Cannot be raised. The city's strategic goals, we've tried to identify all of our general fund activities and all activities in the city related to the 6 goals that council has established in their strategic plan. A brief recap of some of the items we addressed last week. The taxable property value for the city was $3.446 billion. At the current millage rate of 4.6288, the general fund ad valorem revenue would be $15,153,000. A little history of the millage rates, relatively flat. As you can see that in 2015 it was 4.586, and we're now at 4.6288. One of the things that you had mentioned before was the impact of our debt service, so I wanted to include this slide. The blue lines are the operating fund, or the operating millage rates, and the orange line is the debt service rate. Down below you can see the table. So if council decides on the total operating rate to be the same as it was last year, our total millage would be down just a bit from the prior year. See, in FY19, the debt rate was 0.2923, and this year it's 2.725. So you can see it's been declining as we pay off debt. So there's less ad valorem taxes that are required to service the debt. Did I miss one? That one didn't come through. Did you see it on yours, Mayor?
No.
You said you saw the combined?
The millage comparison,
Huh, I don't have that one on my slide.
the one that shows that there are only 3 cities of the 16 with
See
millage
that.
rates below us.
So,
Bunch of
interesting.
Barry
Yours, but
doesn't
not mine.
Mayor,
I don't see it.
Barry doesn't count, come on.
But I do know they're going up.
So I thought that was interesting. We got that information from the surrounding city finance officers. We generally try to do that to get everybody's rate, to give the different councils an idea of where their sister city compatriots are. The next slide we have here was the one we showed before on the rollback rate at 4.3710. That would generate 14.3 million. The city manager has put the estimated proposed budget at 4.6288, which would develop $15.152 million at the current rate. That would be a 5.9% increase over the rollback rate.
What, say they get 5.9 over rollback?
Yes, it's on that slide, it's the second column.
4.6288.
4.6288 would be
Yeah,
5.9% over rollback. And you can see on the right-hand side, the total taxable value is at 3.48 billion. And to get to the taxable value, we take out the CRA values, leaving us a taxable value of $3.445 billion. The requirement is that we can only charge or only calculate at that at 95% of value. And so that 15,152 is at 95% of the full amount of the allocation at the current millage rate. So a value of 1 mil at 95%, about 3 million or 1/10 of a mil is just under 330,000.
What's the actual been over the history, like the last 3 to 5 years?
Of the taxable?
Yeah, I know you have to calculate it
yeah.
at 95% recovery, but what's
This
it
is
what's it actually
the
been?
ad valorem taxes. You can see it's that's not your question. I don't have that answer,
Okay.
but we can get it for you.
For the next meeting, it's fine.
Yep.
We're gonna do a lot of work tonight, but we still got a long way to go.
So this slide is the same as last time. We're looking at the same level of service in the current budget. We're not cutting any current programs in transition. For example, the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Workday ERP system. As I say, that Workday is included, a full year of transport for the ambulance, any pay obligations from the union, the ADA transition plan, the rec center community, the personnel hired, partial year adjustments, so it may have been a partial person last year, and this year we're accounting for the full year. And any professional development of staff. This has been a city manager priority for this year. We've also added the GSA per diem rates, which is increasing the amount of if you or a employee goes on travel, it's increasing the per diem rates pretty significantly. It's about double plus, but they will be easier for us to monitor because the GSA publishes those rates and it's standard across all federal agencies. What's not included in the baseline budget are a la carte items and the general fund capital projects, and we'll get to those later on. Any questions so far? Okay. Looking at the revenues, you can see in the center column there, 40,500,000 is the proposed revenues, and that includes the current ad valorem, or the ad valorem at the current rate, and all the other revenues. That's up about 180,000 from the number that I presented last week. The bulk of that is from code enforcement things. We noticed that there's a significant increase in revenues from the code enforcement activities. About 150-some thousand of that 180.
Go back to that for just a second. Stay there. Communication service tax. We don't expect any continued degradation of that, do we?
It'll probably be kind of just fluttering down. Most of that's coming from landline, and more people are going to their cell phones.
Okay.
Any other questions? This is looking at both ways of looking at a chart. This one's kind of interesting as it gives the relative size of each of the things. I hope that you can read this. I made them a little bigger so it should be able to be seen. The first number is the prior year number. The second one is the change. So in this case, last year it was 14.122 million. It's $1 million change, a 7.3% change, giving a new value of 15.152.
This is your, I'm sorry to cut you off. This is your calculation of the same
At the current rate, yes, sir.
correct?
Yes. And that's 37.4% of the total revenues of our projected for the year.
Scott, how's, with this being the turn of the page budget, over rollback it was 5.9, but that's saying 7.3 here. Or is it 7.3 the amount of the dollar
It
increase?
changed from the
It's
prior
a-
year.
I
at
got
the,
you.
at the
Dollar increase.
Dollar to dollar, not rate to rate.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Because you're not, the
Yeah.
number of properties we're taxing is not a fixed number.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
That's the variable.
This includes new growth.
That's what I
sure
just
does.
said.
Right.
Yes.
Sorry.
This is just a different way of looking at that.
Oh, yeah.
As far as expenses, we're looking at, this is compares 17, 18, 19, and the change from 19 to 20, and the adjusted 20. The number that you have there on the far right is up slightly from the numbers that we presented before, primarily due to some errors that we identified in the total compensation spreadsheet that we use. There was a table that was not updating, and that has been included. In addition, there was $78,000 of overtime for the fire department that we had erroneously taken out, and it should have been included in the last number, so it is now included in this number. So if you see down the bottom right, the total for expenses is $40,028,000. That's a 3.5% increase at these projected expenditures. Here again is a chart that shows the relative size. Again, the $14,479 on police was last year, a $298,000 increase, 2.1%, giving a total revised number of $14.7 million. And that's what those numbers mean on that chart. One of the things that was asked for is what's driving the change. So I thought I'd put these graphs up here that identify what we believe are the primary drivers in the change. In this case, as you might suspect, salaries and wages is a major component.
Personnel costs, both past and present personnel.
That's correct. So you see and I'll show you a change in chart in just a minute, but this is show you prior year to the current year. And this slide shows you the change in each category. So in salaries and wages, there's almost a $400,000 change. In health insurance, $216,000. Workers' comp, there was a study that was done that required some reclassification of several of the employee classifications, and that identified that they were in a higher class, and the resulting rate was a $63,000 increase.
That's all classification changes. It doesn't have anything to do with case history.
I don't know. Jamie.
I should say claims history. I'm just concerned that our claims history has changed to the negative as well.
So we're working on our renewal.
Sorry, Jamie, you gotta. You didn't have so much to eat at that thing this afternoon. You can't make your way
That's
up
right.
here now.
Oops, pardon me. We're working on our renewal currently, so what is built in here, along with the changes to classifications that Scott had referenced, is a 6% increase that we're estimating at this point for workers' comp.
Okay. And who are you again?
Jamie Miller, Administrative Services.
And celebrity chef extraordinaire.
That's
Thank you.
right.
And that 6% is in that number.
Okay.
We're looking at the operations side, which is broken out to personnel and operations. There are quite a few of them here, but you can see this is what makes up the bulk of change in the operating expense. The largest one is our data processing. That's actually Fund 501 that truncated the side there. So that's the allocation to the general fund departments from the internal service fund for IT. The next largest one there is fleet financing. The big bulk of that is the new fire truck is fully amortized in this particular number. And that was a major.
We've also added vehicles as well.
Added vehicles as well, yes, sir.
It's not just replacement.
Building maintenance is up a little bit, 85,000. There are some reductions, 12,000 in uniforms. So the departments are taking a look at where they can reduce expense. Here's a graphical representation of that chart. So it's a little easy to see what the main drivers are. And in insurance, in 504 fund, there's a $106,000 reduction, which is a major change in our insurance policy. As there's a renegotiation, Jamie? Yes.
What is,
Are they reducing the benefits?
This is our liability insurance side, and
Oh,
all the other
liability
insurances
side,
for
okay.
the city.
what is driving the push-up in training costs, employee training?
Two things on that. One is the city manager's emphasis on professional development,
Mhm.
and you'll see a slide a little later on Workday. So
Okay.
the combination of those two is the primary driver for that.
That's fine, I just want to make sure we're investing well. In contract services, we are, I'm going to assume part of that is palm trees, because we did not include that last year.
That's correct. That's one that's on
The 19,000, that 47, if I remember the number correctly. That's a big jump in 1 year.
and I believe that's also in community development, Margaret, is,
Parks. Palm trees are parks.
isn't?
You adding
I
US
believe some of the
one-
inspection services for contracts are also a part of that, I believe. Is that right, Margaret?
Don, you know the mayor never liked palm trees.
Okay. Any other questions on that one? Okay. This is a identification of the change in the departmental budgets from year to year, or from 19 to 20, and the percent change. 3.5%, as I'd indicated earlier. Total increase of $1.4 million.
I think it's interesting when we take a look at those graphically by percent, but the departments in size, you can add just a little bit to one department and it skews it on the chart, and add that same amount to another department, say police or fire,
And
and
it's
it's a
pennies.
blip on the radar.
Yeah.
Very true. This again is a comparison of the dollar change from the prior year. A little different way of looking at it from high to low.
There again, the two biggest changers are the two of the smallest expenditure departments.
As we've seen earlier last presentation, that the bulk of those changes are in personnel, personnel cost. And that's the percent change. So just to your point there, the city clerk had the largest change. But hopefully we're getting a good records management system.
Go Robin. That's okay. Yeah, she can handle the extra scrutiny that goes along with it, right, Robin?
Absolutely.
There you go.
As indicated earlier, there are significant costs in Workday implementation. You can see almost $600,000 is in the current operating budget for Workday continuing implementation commitments. Many of these are, you can see the Workday Rising Conference, that's one of the major expenses on the personnel side, but down towards the bottom there, the Workday annual subscription fee is $280,000. And the Workday Lease and Replacement Fund payback is about $160,000. So those two combined are pretty significant. And over time, we will be reducing the overall expenses as we terminate the Naviline support agreement and some of the other software that's being replaced by Workday. Questions there? Okay.
Can you
Revenue
go,
and
can you,
expen-
I'm sorry, Scott, can
Sure.
you go over that again, that annual subscription fee, 278, is there a sunset on that?
I'm sorry, is there a what?
Is there an end to that?
No, not unless you want to stop using the software.
That's not part of just part of the transition, that's an ongoing.
That's ongoing, just like we pay for our maintenance now with HDE. We have to continue to pay to use the software, otherwise we lose our license
Sure.
and can't use it anymore.
Just confirming.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and some of the stuff was already budgeted in the CIP, so it's not, some of this is not new money, some of it's already in the CIP that will be spent over the next coming years as we wind down the CIP part of this project.
But overlap nonetheless.
Mhm.
So to provide you with a summary, you can see that we'd forecast $40,500,000 in revenue and just a little over $40 million in expense. So this leaves us about $500,000 of revenue over expense for your consideration to either use that for the a la carte items that are coming up or reduce millage or whatever you decide that is best for the city. Also, we'd identified about $500,000 in our current general fund balance that is over and above the 30% target that the council has set. And then the FEMA reimbursement that we talked about before is expected in approximately somewhere 18 plus months, and there's 2.8 million there, or approximately. And
But
should
those might not be in the bank as cash, but we have it booked as accounts receivable, so we are,
no, sir, we don't. That's
We don't-
pending. We don't book it. We don't put it on our books until we actually get a commitment that we're going to get the money.
so we don't have it on a balance sheet anywhere?
No, sir.
Okay.
It's kind of like grant money. If you know it's coming, we can't really book it until you get the letter that says we're awarding you the grant.
So it's not an account receivable until we get an award letter?
That's correct.
Okay.
Dr. Niels,
Yes.
what might we have over the enterprise fund balances over our reserve policy, which is 25 to 30%?
We have not got to that point yet. That's
Okay.
coming up, but we'll give you the same kind of information.
Oh,
once we get
okay,
that.
great.
Scott, on the, I know it's kind of tricky to figure that out, but I had asked Jake for you guys to look into it. On those FEMA reimbursement dollars, I know you're saying basically we may anticipate seeing that full return over the next 18 months. But going into the fiscal year cycle, is there a way to project, we think we'll get 30% by January 1st, another 30% by April 1st, any of that kind of stuff, like where we can look at that?
Shannon Ball looked at that and he said, based on what we've had in the past, we think it'll occur in the next 18 months.
We just know it's coming, we just don't know. Okay.
So it wasn't any more specific than that, unfortunately.
Since we're talking about it right now.
Because that kind of drags us into next year's budget.
Since we're talking about it right now, I just want to plant a seed. My thought, and we don't need to decide this second, but my thought is that we concentrate on what we're doing with ad valorem revenue, on the a la cartes, what we do and don't want to do, and then the capital projects that we have in the CIP that are not funded, we can take a look later as we get those dollars in, how to fund those out of that, or in October, we'll also see some carryover dollars that we can reassess at that time. So my thought is that we take care of the immediate a la cartes with ad valorem, just to recap, and the capital projects, as we see those dollars come in later, we can take a look at our priorities.
And Scott,
Those are longer term projects anyway.
yeah, the change here, the additional, or the change of 503,000, did you say that can be used to reduce millage or for capital or for
Yeah,
towards both?
whatever council decides, if you say that you reduce the millage, then that will come off of the ad valorem taxes and would reduce that fund balance, or that revenue over expense number.
Okay, so then there would be it'd be roughly 800,000 instead of the 1.3 million, right? If we took out the 500,000?
No, that's excess, that's money that's in fund balance that's
Gotcha.
over the 30%.
Gotcha.
So if you use that 500,000, approximately 500,000, it would bring you down to 30%, which is your target.
Gotcha.
But you also have a policy that you can go below that if you have a plan to reimburse that fund within the next 2 to 3 years.
Understood.
And I think that's kind of what the mayor was indicating.
Okay, so we're good there.
Now, I did see that there was a slide that did not come through, but I believe it was sent to you this afternoon on the personnel. So if you have questions on the staffing, I don't know why that didn't come through.
That was sent separately, so.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that as page 33 and 34 of your presentation here, which comes up after this, so.
Oh, maybe, I'm sorry.
You're not to it
You're right,
yet.
I had it up earlier there. Speaking of that slide.
There it is.
What you see here is the trend from the previous years, and in proposed 20 is the numbers that are requested added to the FY19. So if council decides to approve all of these positions, then the total personnel authorized would be 18 at the end of the year, and it's 303 now. So it'd be a 5% increase in the number of personnel. So total in the request is 15, and that includes all those you can see on the right-hand side where request, it said the city managers, management analyst, which was in the a la carte. For city attorney, the senior administrative assistant, and a reclassification. In finance, the accounting supervisor and internal auditor. Those particular positions are in the budget currently. That's why they were not on the a la carte.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, are all these vacancies in here in the a la carte as well, or some of them not?
They're all in the a la carte except for the accounting supervisor and the internal auditor.
Okay.
They're in the finance operating budget. Then human resources, a training coordinator. In fire services, an admin assistant. And then in police, the 4 additional officers, 1 community service officer, 3 code, and 1 custodian. And those were all discussed in the prior meeting.
So current vacancies are reflective of fiscal year 19 or proposed 20? I just want to be clear about
Current
that.
vacancies, Mayor.
For fiscal year 19?
Yes.
Okay.
So in the finance department, for example, we are still looking for a budget analyst, the position that Lupe had before she was promoted. And we've actually interviewed for that particular position.
We'll see what you get for promoting people.
I'll do it every day, Mayor, if I can.
I heard that.
In community development, Tim had indicated that both of those positions they are interviewing for. Is that correct? So those are in process as well. I don't have any update on the police unless, Chief, you have any comment on those? Yeah, on your vacancies?
Yeah, it's actually.
Thank you. He knew he was going to get fussed at.
Tom Gawali, Police Chief. It's actually 9. We just actually filled the CSO position. I think it was Monday. I offered a gentleman the position, so he's going through the back. He's actually finishing up with the background. Excuse me, and we'll get him on in the next pay period. So it's
So it'll
9
be 8.
vacancies. I'm sorry.
It'll be
So
8.
we just went from 10 to 9, he's saying.
Oh, 10 to
10 to
9,
9.
okay.
Chief?
But other than that, it's actually.
Chief,
Chief,
information.
also, didn't you mention that
Oh.
some of those you've also got in training
There-
right now? Of that 7?
Of the 7 officers.
That are vacant? Or did you have 10 and there's 3?
No, that includes, no, that's our 7 openings, right?
Oh, okay,
Yes,
I'm sorry.
that's the openings, those do not include the recruits at the academy or an FTO or anything like that.
Walk me through a timeline, just informationally, from the time you identify somebody, how long it takes to go through the academy, and then how long it takes to get them through field training, so you can actually have a position filled, but they're not operational on their own.
Correct.
What kind of timeline is this?
So roughly a year, roughly. So what we start off is identifying quality candidates. We start them in that process. We go through, that process includes oral panels. We through a physical assessment. Then from there, we go on to the background. Includes we no longer do the polygraph, we do voice stress analysis and just another version of polygraph. Again, the background is very in-depth, of course, as it has to be. And then all the other psychological, physical, drug screens, all that stuff, we go through all that. We get them on, we send them to the academy. The academy is approximately a college semester. It's, 12 to 14 weeks, and then we get them out. They go into a field training officer program. That is, they're paired up with a senior officer on different shifts, and our field training program has different phases in it. In each phase, they're given a little bit more responsibility, each phase as they go along, and their training officer steps back a little bit and allows them to start to go on their own. But that's a 12 to 16 week process, and the reason there's a 12 to 16 is because some officers catch on quicker and it takes them 12.
Different learning
Some
curves.
take a little bit longer. They need a little bit, they may be deficient in one area or two. We need to give them a little extra training. So, and then they're on their own. And even when they're on their own, it's still,
No,
you know,
my
the
next
sergeants,
question.
they're tasked with keeping an eye on them on the road. So it's a solid year, Mayor, from the time we identify somebody to get them through all of our background, all that stuff, get them sent to the academy, get them through the academy, get them through the FTO where they're actually out on their own. It's actually probably a little over a year, but about a year approximate.
And how did you come to Well, I mean, without being at full staffing, knowing that we've got openings, I'll talk while you're cleaning your mess up there.
Yeah, thank you.
How did you decide that you need 4 more officers when we're not at full, at or near full staff now?
So good question. So as I said last week, there really is no standard per se. Oftentimes in law enforcement, they'll use the per capita officer to per capita standard. There really is no standard. It's one of many ways to do it. And the idea behind that is as your population increases, your calls for service increase. That's the idea behind it. It's somewhat rudimentary, I'll fully admit that. So the reason I use those numbers though, or I reference those, is because that's how the state does it when they reference officers to population. That's how they do it through FDLE. So that's the only reason I use that. So it gives us an idea of where we'd like to be. There are there's other better methods actually out there. The problem I find with us, we're on a 12-hour shift. It makes it difficult to get all that data plugged into the formulas, if you will, because for us a 12-hour shift, whether you're on nights or days, it's that platoon of officers is working. I don't have the ability to say, well, on nights we may not have as many calls. I could move them to days. That's not how it works. That would be more of like a 3-shift type of program. We have a 2-shift program. So we have
Mayor,
nights
can
and-
I add something to this conversation, if you don't mind?
You can try.
Okay. I was listening to this conversation last week, and something came upon me to, an idea to look at. And, in a large organization, you do have turnover, and Chief Romaldi's done a really good job. We used to have a lot higher turnover rate in that department. It's gone down a lot since you've gotten here. And so I looked at the turnover rate last 3 or 4 years. Over the last 2 years, it's been pretty stable. And what I was thinking about in terms of officers on the street and boots on the ground, if you've got an organization that has the same vacancy rate over time, and even if you have 7 or 8 and 9, 10 vacancies, they're maybe a police officer, but they're different people coming in and out. If you raise the number of people you have to put boots on the ground and your vacancy rate remains the same, you technically have more boots on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Just something to think about as you discuss this. And the other question I had was, I know we found more revenue. There's more revenue coming in for the code enforcement that we could see, and not that that's the reason we do it. We want people to comply. That's just a tool to help them comply. I'm assuming if we had more code officers, the unfortunate aspect of that is more revenue would come in because we'd be able to check people more often and check cases more often that helping them do what they're supposed to be doing.
Albeit that our goal is not to
That's
raise
right.
revenue, but
Compliance.
rather to get
Right.
compliance.
Right. Just from a purely financial standpoint of view, it's not a net increase to the general fund. There will be possibly some increase to revenue on the other side. I don't know what that is. Just
So, Mayor, if I could just finish with that. So, when I did a 5-year plan, and I tried to extrapolate out and base it on not only our population, but our calls for service. Our calls for service continue to rise
Which
as well.
seems like a better indicator
True.
of
True.
workforce workload.
And so, with that, I broke it down. I basically broke it down to, I think, 4 or 5 officers a year. Just as I said last week, if you were so gracious as a board to say, Chief, we're going to give you 15 officers tonight, I could not possibly assimilate 15 officers at once. I wouldn't turn you down, but I certainly couldn't. So what we did is we tried to break them up each year and divide it and say, well, maybe if we do 4 officers a year. So, and it'll get us to that rate. Now, understanding that as we continue to grow, that number may continue to change, and I understand that as well. So, so that's where I came up with that from, and so it was more of a 5-year plan on that.
Because I actually went into your annual report, and it seems like calls for service, 59,000 plus. The numbers seem kind of flat the last 2 or 3 years. We haven't seen a big increase in calls for service. Now, granted, 60,000 calls for service every year, divided by 365 days,
Yeah.
divided by shifts. I know it's a lot.
Sure. And what that doesn't take into account is our proactive, our officers out there proactively stopping vehicles. When we add those in, it goes over to the 60,000, well into the 60,000s, because that does take time. And we expect that from our officers, because that is a crime-fighting tool to stop officers and have high visibility out there. Because when the criminals come through and they see that Port Orange police are active and they're out there, they often, we hope, turn around at the town line. So that doesn't take into, those are strictly calls for service that we are sent to.
Self-initiated.
Yeah, so the self-initiated ones, like the car stops and the vehicle stops and such like that.
And having
add
ridden
to
with some of your
that.
guys,
And
I can
those
see
do
how it can
take
be.
time. Sometimes we can wrap it up in 30 minutes. Other times, they turn into much larger cases because, and that's okay too, because they're getting drugs and guns and et cetera off the
As they
street.
come into
so-
bigger cases, you're
Sure.
solving bigger things. I'm just using that kind of as an indicator, looking at the numbers from the annual reports. It also seems like, from what you're telling me, as we fill those positions and our officers become more experienced, if our leadership is training them and pushing them to do the jobs they're gonna do, these numbers could actually go up. So they might not necessarily say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if I'm seeing those calls for service come up because of self-initiation, better officers, more experienced officers as we grow the force, then we can't necessarily use that as a reason to say, hey,
Sure.
we need more people.
Sure, because that's.
When
yeah.
the reason the numbers are coming up is because we have more.
Because that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? So if we say our officers are being proactive out there and the numbers are going up, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. We expect
We
that from our
want more of
officers
that.
because that is a crime-fighting strategy.
Mhm.
So, yes,
Part of that visibility.
sure.
Okay.
So
Any
Chief-
other questions while we got the chief here?
Yeah, let me make sure I heard you correctly.
Sure.
You said you hired a CSO this week,
Yes.
It's
We-
so that the person that's listed on your à la carte we can take out?
No, that's in addition to. So I had three CSOs.
Okay.
Current budget.
One recently retired.
Okay.
And so we filled that one, and then I'm asking in the à la carte for one extra. And that
Okay.
would be the front desk position that we talked about.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
What other
Chief,
questions? Go ahead, Scott.
I would imagine the next academy class is probably already set, so I think it starts next month, right? Or is the academy, yeah, I think it starts in
Yes,
August.
soon, because
Do
I
you have
just
any
got.
seats reserved in that class?
We do. We have a very
Do?
good relationship with the academy staff there. I mean, half of them are Port Orange
Right.
police officers, or retired, I should say. So we do have, so we usually can pick up the phone, and I don't want to say this in a public meeting because the other chiefs will get
No, I
mad.
get it.
But we typically can get seats.
Oh,
We
none of
are
them are
looking
watching.
at, yeah, we are looking at some individuals right now
Okay.
that we're interested in, and we're putting them through the background process. I just don't want to offer them a conditional offer until I get.
But they would be more along the lines of the January class, right?
We're thinking we can get them in before the January, because I
Really?
think there's an October class starting.
I think there's a
Um,
part-time, yeah. I think the full-time class is August and the next one's
The,
January. I could be wrong.
yeah, I know the part-time class that's currently there graduates in November, because we have an officer
Okay.
in that class as well. So I don't think
Maybe
they'll
some
start
overlap.
another part-time one until that finishes. But
Okay.
I'm pretty sure one starts in October, because they're graduating one in early October.
Is there typically a cap that the college is placing for agencies to say, okay, you can only have, we're gonna work with you, but you can only have so many, because I know there's 16 cities. in the
I
county
haven't
and
ran
everything,
into
so
that, but I
okay.
gotta imagine that they do try to be fair and
Yeah.
spread the wealth. I haven't ran into that yet. I mean, we have had some classes where we've had 4 recruits in one class, so
Got it.
we have had some success having multiple seats.
Okay.
And might as well, while I'm up here, so we're not going over it again, and I know we've got more to go with Scott's presentation, but if your request for a custodian became a part-time instead of a full-time one, is that something you could live with?
Certainly.
Because
I
it's
mean-
more than what you got now? so-
Yeah, and that's exactly how I'm looking at it, sir. So, yes, I do believe that our size of our building, our facility, requires 2 full-time, but certainly a part-time position would give me that ability where I could probably flex some hours and overlap and get some evening stuff done as well. So it'd certainly be more, as you said, more than I have now.
Well, I kind of look at it two different things. One, you have a building full of professionals that know how to clean up and be professional and take care of themselves, but that doesn't mean they're cleaning bathrooms and taking out
Sure.
garbage. I get that.
Yeah.
But by the same token, I kind of look at problem solving as a progressive thing. So maybe we try this. If it's not enough, then you go to the next. So they're
Absolutely, and I'd certainly be willing to, discuss that without a doubt.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Any other questions on this slide? The next slide is the same format, except this is looking at it in per thousand. I got an estimate of 61,600 for the population that will come out hopefully this year, here in this next month. So if you look at that, if all of these slots were filled, it would be a total of 5.21 employees per thousand for FY20, or a 5% increase from the previous year.
Keeping in mind that not all of those have the same impact. Maybe officers on the road per thousand has a higher impact, but span of control, it doesn't, for example, HR functions, it's more about the number of people that work for us as opposed to the number of people who live in the city. So they're not not all those numbers are created equal in that regard.
It's just a strictly mathematical calculation is used across many different places for comparison. So, thought that might help just provide some perspective. This information, other than the current year, is also in the budget book, the big one. I'd like to move now into the a la carte request. There have been a few changes on this in the city attorney and human resource numbers, and they'll speak to that when we get to those departments. So in non-departmental, any questions on that one from last week?
Those numbers did not change.
They did not change.
Any technical questions about what they're asking for involved with those things?
Where did you get the number of 75,000 for consulting service to look at pension
It
plans?
was
From me.
kind of an estimate of what we've seen in the past, and Alan has worked on that particular program here a couple of years, and this is the consultant's best estimate of what it would cost, at least preliminarily.
In order to safely kind of calculate what we need to do, we need to get the services of a pension attorney who we have used for other things, that knows the law in depth about how to change the ordinances to make sure that they comply with state law, and then also to help us through the negotiation process, and then also an actuary to kind of cost out because I can do back of the napkin calculations to give us a general idea, but to really go through the pension plans, all the variables to kind of give us an idea of how much we'd be saving or losing if we did one thing or another.
This is two parts. One is if we employed FRS. So part of what we're looking at, and the other part being combining the management of different plans.
No.
What are we looking at here?
I think this one is mostly moving to FRS.
Okay.
How we would need to do it, how we move along, being guided along, and then making sure we had all the calculations correct so that we could accurately represent to our members and to you in the city how much it would cost or how much we would save by moving and doing one thing or another.
Okay.
And I believe 75 might cover one or two different bargaining units, not just one.
Okay.
So did you look at the idea of instead of having individual plan administrators, adding one individual perhaps in finance?
I think that the caveat there is that I believe we'd have to get agreement from those boards, correct?
Yes.
Well, I understand that, but the question is that in this cost estimate? Or you didn't consider that at all?
I don't think so.
We did. It was substantially less money, but this is the one that seemed the council wanted to consider.
Okay.
So we put that one. The other one is something that I know that Councilman Stiltner and I have talked about, if looking at consolidating the administration. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other questions on this one? Okay. Jamie, do you want to address this one?
Hello, Jamie Miller again. So the change that you see on this one is after reviewing, this would be moved to a 6-month hire for an April start date to be remaining on the a la carte request list.
Okay. So the salary would be the same, and of course we'd have to absorb the full impact of that
The
next
following
year
year.
with the increase if we did it as proposed.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what are we trying to accomplish with the addition of a training coordinator?
Absolutely. Currently, you'll see a training coordinator type role in our police and fire department. We do not have something like that for citywide in the HR department. Training is often something that gets pushed to the back as far as tracking, making sure we're in line with the training that we should be administering to all of our employees, as well as creating new content, rolling out new content. One of the things that for a long time we've identified as a need is when an employee is promoted or hired into a supervisory role, we do not have a formal program that they go through to ensure that they're in line with what we need them to be as a supervisor. So this position would be charged with creating and rolling something like that out. Additionally, this position would be in charge of keeping track of the certifications and requirements tied to the different certifications, which we currently do not track very well, other than in paper files. In addition to this position would be responsible for ensuring that all of the job descriptions are accurate so that we can base our needs assessments on those to make sure the training that each employee is receiving is making sure that they're fully successful in their role.
Right. I'm trying to absorb all that because some of those are one-time responsibilities and some of those are ongoing things.
Yes, absolutely.
What other questions we got, guys? Ladies?
Thank you.
Come.
Thank you, Mayor. And I also like to identify the spreadsheet that you were sent today that showed all of the changes. If you go through that in your review and see there's been quite a few reductions from the prior budget that we looked at last week. So the departments, I'm very proud of them. They've gone through and looked for items where they could reduce their expenses, and I would say that Administrative Services is probably one of the best that's done that. They've really taken a look at their budget.
You don't have to suck up to her.
She does a good job.
You know, as long as you're there, Dr. Niels, can I ask you a question about
Certainly.
what you sent? It's on the third page, or at least when I did it landscape.
Oh,
it's
yes.
the item you just referenced.
Yep.
And it's the summary?
You're looking at this sheet?
Yes.
Marilyn, can you just, so I can catch up to you, which document are you looking at, which page? 'Cause
We got it, well, I don't know, this morning, I think.
This morning, this afternoon, it's the.
I'm using the one.
It's a
that-
3-page Excel spreadsheet that shows the summary of all
what's
the
it titled
departments.
as?
General
Uh,
fund expense budget by
by
department.
department.
And I'm using the spreadsheet you sent this afternoon, because then, as I put in my numbers, they change.
I don't-
I think it was the email that I sent, maybe around 12.
With the 3 different attachments?
Yes. And one of the Excel spreadsheets is C-FY20 budget schedules for July CC workshop 7/24/19.
Yeah.
Nice long name. That's the one you're looking at?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, Marilyn.
That's okay.
Mhm.
Under summary, non-operating contingency, I guess I may have missed, because fiscal year 19 was 91,500 and 20 is 310,238.
In that particular one, that's where we've identified a potential change in the compensation for NAGE.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Not just NAGE.
And
Sorry.
potential change in compensation.
Did I ask the question?
Okay. This is why we have workshops. Any other
Yeah.
questions on admin services before we go to the city attorney department? Margaret's at the ready, it looks like.
Here we are.
Council members, we're requesting a couple of adjustments. These are what I like to refer to as small dollars. It's about a difference that we're looking for of $10,000. We've gone through the numbers with finance and seen that there is about $30,000 in the turn the page budget. So that leaves us a need of $10,000 to accomplish this change. We believe it's important to give the personnel the opportunity to keep excelling and learning. This particular employee that's getting the reclass will have the opportunity to step further up. In order to give that employee that opportunity, there has to be relief on the administrative side. We're pulling in the lowest level administrative assistant to fulfill that purpose. We accomplished some savings by dropping the timing a couple of months. We can get another significant savings by that, and I'm willing to drop whatever is necessary to get this right within the budget. The next year, of course, we'll see that $10,000 adjustment in full. We always look at this budget hard. We work it tight. We've been fortunate due to the good work of everybody else in this city, not throwing us any curveballs or unexpected litigation. With the change that is being requested in police alone, we can expect more on the liability side, more police officers, more concerns there. Not that there's anything unusual, it just goes with the trade. We can also expect more police legal advice, which is the bread and butter for Matt Jones. Council, the code enforcement prosecutions have come to the legal team also, and this is a fairly recent change. We're in our first full year of doing those prosecutions. We will continue with that effort once we change teams. For instance, we moved from the magistrate or the board's council to the staff's council. With more code officers will come more legal team support there. So we see $10,000 as being within reason to meet those needs just alone. Now I'm going to throw out ERP too. ERP is going to bring great efficiency to finance and human resources. Those efficiencies are perhaps just on the how we do our vacation time. They're on small dollars or small impacts in the legal. I expect the efficiencies of two major elements of this city to bring more work through my door, because they will be faster, better, more efficient, and we're not getting that same kind of processing dynamic. Although I think we're doing good with our processing, but I'm expecting some real good things to be happening in those two areas of our city, which will impact us somewhat in a more demanding aspect. So I want to be poised for that demand.
Questions for Margaret? All right. Thank you for making those adjustments.
City Manager Department, the Management Analyst, any questions on that?
But I'm still a little. Alan,
Sure.
refresh my memory on what they'd be responsible for accomplishing.
So management analysts would do some of the lower level projects that I never have time to get to, and also be able to take a lot of the information we're going to get out of the new financial system and hopefully create a lot more clarity as to where we are, what we're doing, how we're doing it, how fast, and get a lot of those analytics and be able to get them out. A lot of the stuff that I do too, from the management analyst level are things like, we did tons of process improvements even before the ERP came along. We're doing some now in conjunction with the ERP, but as you know, no process or system is ever perfect. And I know my goal when I was younger is to always pay for my salary in studies that I do to try to save cities or counties money that I work for. And so this management analyst I would hope I could direct that person to do some more of those things that I can't get to. An example we had was we used to do estoppel letters. People buy houses and they have to get the estoppel letters, and we found a process by which we could serve the people in about a fifth of the time, charge them half the money, and get them what they needed in a quicker turnaround time. And it was no cost to us, just a little reduction in revenue that we share with the people that help us with it. And so those are the type of things that I look for, and just things that I see on a daily basis that we can improve upon, that this management analyst could help do that and hopefully help reduce costs or workload in the future.
Okay.
I had a question,
All right.
Mayor. Mr. Rosen, would it be possible, instead of hiring somebody, to look for somebody to do internship who's in a graduate program, say at Stetson?
Yeah, we actually used to do, thank you for asking that. We actually used to do a combined internship with us, DeLand, the county, and I think New Smyrna. And we had a graduate student that would come in. They came in for about 2 months out of the year. They'd kind of float around. They go to different departments. Actually, she was the one that helped me with that project, funny enough. That actually got cut out of the budget a couple of years ago, so we haven't been able to do that anymore. It's a lot cheaper than hiring somebody else. We only get them for 2 months, and maybe they're able to work on a portion of one project. So it wouldn't be the robust information that we could get from somebody full time, but somebody could help, 2 months out of the year. And we are also, as part of FCCMA, again, it would have to be the city that would pay for it. ICMA runs a national internship program from graduate students that get hired all over the country. And FCCMA itself was talking about doing something similar for the state of Florida to get people from Florida to stay in Florida and work for the cities and counties here to use our own talent. It's not, it's kind of in the works. They haven't really set it up yet, but it's something we're thinking about as an organization to draw more young people and keep them in the state.
The other thing is the manager indicated that ERP won't be fully implemented till about January 3rd. So I guess I'm wondering, can you save a quarter of a year's salary if we were to approve this and authorize a position?
Yeah, I think that would be the same answer as most of the other positions. I mean, sometimes, I don't know if you can hire on spec knowing that you've got the budget in October. I guess you could start the process early. But if council wanted to fund it and wanted to hold off, that is correct. We will not have fully operational ERP till the end of December. And then, of course, the budget module we won't be using till next year because we're not using it right now because we don't have it. And then, of course, as time goes on, we'll be adding a new ERP system for community development and utility billing to hook and everything else. So just keep in mind the tail on the other end that 3
Marilyn's
extra
asking
months.
what I'm thinking, because not only do we need to get ERP implemented, up and running, but we need to have some time using it.
To understand it.
First of all, because not everybody's going to use it as well as they can initially. We'll get better at it. So the data that we'd be generating from it in the first place, short-term, new, fresh. And don't get me wrong, you show me a position where I can invest a little bit of money and turn around and save money, I like the thought of it. I have timing questions. We're still in the early phases of getting that going, and we actually have to have some analysis to, I don't know, just thinking out loud and playing off of what you're saying. It's something I definitely see value in, but there are timing issues there. Questions or other comments on this one? Anybody? Okay.
Next, in the fire department. Chief Costa.
Good evening, Ken Fuston, Fire Chief. What we're looking for in our a la carte menu next year is permission to raise our overtime budget by $15,000 over the turn-to-page budget. That would provide us enough overtime to staff our transport unit 7 days a week, which we just recently started around July the 4th weekend, right after July the 4th. We're also asking for a full-time administrative assistant in next year's budget. Again, we're one of the largest departments in the city that only has currently one administrative assistant. Prior to the recession, we were a department that had 2. Since the recession, we've doubled our call volume. We've added a lot of new programs, and there's plenty of enough workload there to keep 2 administrative assistants quite busy. We're also asking for some exercise equipment that previously got cut out of our budget last year to be reinstated. Again, a truck for our fire inspector. We put a fire inspector on 40-hour work week. We did not purchase him a vehicle for his duties. And then we're looking to upgrade some of our furniture. I will be happy to provide you pictures of some of the furniture that our members are sitting on, and I can assure you that it's junk.
See if it's the
Some
same
of the
furniture.
bed frames we're looking at, we're just looking to create additional storage space for our
I
members.
thought they were too busy to sit around.
They do get their time, yeah.
Okay.
They do get their time.
I'm certain it's the same furniture I sat in 7.5 years ago.
Probably
I'm
so.
certain it is.
Probably so, yeah.
You sat in it?
Yeah.
That explains a lot.
And then we're also just trying to update some of our office furniture. Again, some of the office furniture that we use in the staff administration area, we repurposed when human resources flooded. So we're making do with what we got. We're just trying to get updated. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
On your OT, even with, I know there hasn't been much ambulance revenue coming in so far, but I would suspect that call volume going up during the weekends, that the revenue would more than offset the additional
I would be
overtime.
willing to agree with you.
Yeah.
We transported 7 patients yesterday in 12 hours.
Wow. Nice.
We're just getting used
Okay.
a lot. To date, we've already transported 280 residents. I think on an average collection rate of $300 per transport, we're looking at 84,000 already, potentially up to 112,000 if we get closer to 400. So
Okay.
I think the program is
300 is a very conservative number.
I think 300 is very
And that's-
conservative. I
I
hope
mean,
to be
you're-
closer to 400, but I
Yeah.
want to give the most conservative number.
Yeah.
We're gonna collect more than half.
Yeah, okay, so that would be offset, that's good, okay.
I have a question. I thought at last meeting's presentation, Chief, you said you really didn't feel confident predicting that the revenue we'd get from the transports would be a direct offset. Am I misremembering what the conversation was last week?
No, I stand by that statement. I don't think I don't think we would ever see enough revenue to make the program cost neutral.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my question was directed just at the additional 15,000. That's what this cost of 15,000, that additional revenue from having them for longer it would more than offset that small amount.
I think
Not
the
the total
turn to
cost.
page budget represents 5-day-a-week operation.
Mm-hmm.
The 15,000 a la carte request is to run 7 days a week operation.
Right, but I guess I'm just trying to be clear that you were hesitant without a year's worth of data to, if you will, claim victory that it would be revenue neutral.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want us going down the road thinking,
Well, when we've taken this program around for the last couple of years, we've had to use some sort of projection. We had to come up with a number.
Right.
And so we've focused at being ultra conservative based on what we've seen with the other agencies around the city and stuff. So I think that $300 number comes from kind of that really
That $300
conservative-
number came from, actually, when we did our original presentation, we used the collection rate back then of Edgewater, which was 320.
Right.
And the collection rate of Ponce Inlet was 480, and we just went with 400 right in the middle. Now, what I have personally seen on the collection rates from New Smyrna, Edgewater, and Ponce Inlet is hovering close to 300. So that's, to be conservative, I
Yeah,
think that's the right thing to do.
That's reasonable.
And I think it's the right thing to stay very conservative.
Yeah.
Until we get that year, 18 months where just kind of get a better.
Conservative, but not overly
I think to
so.
Drew's point,
Yeah.
I think the $15,000 request in a la carte for weekend coverage, I think that our potential revenue for weekend call volume will cover that investment.
Last year, we were projecting 1.65, I believe, and we're averaging 3.41 as of a couple of weeks ago.
3.6 as of 8 o'clock last night.
So
and
we're
I think we
averaging
originally
3.6
estimated-
transport, so
A little more than double.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
there's being conservative, and we were way off. So I want conservative, but
Yeah,
I don't want to the point where it's actually hurting us to be too conservative.
I think that the current call volume, we're looking at probably around 1,200 transports per year. And that's in a 12-hour operation. Everyone else involved in the program, county and all the other municipal providers are all running 24-hour operations.
when we're scheduling our people for 24-hour shifts.
Yes, we have to. They work a 24-hour shift. So in the PM side, when the transport closes, that gives us theoretically one extra body if, depending on how the vacation schedule is, depending on if there's anybody else
Called out.
off, sometimes it gives us one extra body to use as needed.
Okay.
Chief, last year we, if I recall, the budget approved for 4, correct? 4 new hires?
3 for the transport and 1 to backfill the 40-hour fire inspector. So 4
Okay.
total.
So we did hire 4?
Yes.
All right, I was confused based on a call we had with Al the other day. I thought you'd only hired 3.
No, we hired 4 total, but 3 were for transport.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Any other questions? Scott, I'm gonna ask you a question.
Sure.
The revenue assumptions for transport, what were they based on for fiscal year 20? How many transports a
I
day?
don't know the answer to that, Mayor, but I can get it for you.
Okay, basically what I'm looking for is number of transports versus revenue.
Unless you have that, Chief?
67,000
67?
for this current fiscal
Yeah, for FY19.
What do we, in the budget you built though, for fiscal year 20?
I haven't seen anything related to ambulance revenue in the revenue projections for next year.
So
Yeah,
we
get that-
haven't
get
built
that back
it,
to
have not built that in yet? So that's another element,
Yeah.
that's another element to add to this budget then. Okay. That's actually good news.
Yeah, we can take a look at that and make sure that it is or isn't in there, and then obviously be very conservative again, just to make sure we don't overshoot, and see how that plays out in the general fund.
So I was just, rough numbers in my head, if we're transporting 3.5 people a day, you're doing 24 hours and you're doing 4.5. If you're doing 3.5 transports of revenue and allowing that extra one to go, times the $700, times the 90% because the county takes 10% off the top, times probably a 50% collection rate, even though I think we'll probably be in a 60 to 65 range. I don't know. Those are the things, those are the numbers. You guys are the smart people. You'll work with them. Let me know what you think when you build those numbers, because
let us all know.
obviously that'll get built into this budget as well. Okay.
Perfect.
Next, police, any other questions other than what the chief's already gone over?
Yeah, because we kind of jumped the gun there, but he was up there, so I couldn't help myself. Code enforcement officers, you're talking about, okay, that's vehicles as well. Who are you again?
Tom Grimaldi, Chief of Police. So the code enforcement, Mayor and Council, what I explained last week was what we envision is dividing the city up into a little bit more zones to make the zones more manageable for our code enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we have 4 code enforcement officers, and are you afraid I'm going to break that? We have 4 code enforcement officers. Cities divided into quadrants, and it's just they're just about unmanageable. Only because we continue to grow, the complaints continue to come in. We want our code enforcement officers to be just like our officers, proactive.
I'm sorry, I won't complain so much.
No, we need to hear those complaints to address, but we also want them to be proactive as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea, what we envision is dividing it up into more manageable zones, and then one of those officers as well, strictly and solely being responsible for the commercial properties, which I know this council has been asked us to start looking at them a little bit harder than we have in the past, and we have. Our code enforcement officers have been paying more attention, but we'd like to take that commercial code enforcement officer solely responsible for that, and that person would take that, and then the rest of it would be all the residential
Probably
type
be
stuff.
one of your more experienced officers doing it. Then.
Yeah, actually,
Have to be.
we would prefer it to be one of our current officers that we have. We actually have somebody in mind. So we'd like it to be one of our current experienced officers for the commercial sector. So that's the idea behind the 3. We have taken on more tasks as well. since they've came over to the police department. We've passed a couple ordinances, all needed, all legitimately needed. But we have taken on more as well, including the shopping carts, and there's many different ordinances with the trees that we're really paying more attention to now. We're just making more time, but we do run out of time.
Did we build anything into the revenue assumptions with code revenue? Or did we leave that the same?
We did not, and I don't
Okay, so we
believe
just looked at
we
this from a
did
cost
in finance.
standpoint.
Yeah, for code, I don't
We
believe,
had about 150.
we did? I stand corrected. When I say we, I mean Dr. Niels and his staff. So, yes.
So we looked at more revenue
Thank
as
you.
well as, so simply if I say I want to add one officer instead of three and look at this on a progressive, more of a progressive plan over a longer period of time as to how many we need to add, I wouldn't be saving just the cost of two others. I would also be hacking at the revenue projection as well, to some degree.
Yeah, yes, there would, yes, there would
Now,
be
granted, that's
some
not big
degree.
money.
I don't think it would be, I'm not sure what that number would look like, but it marginally would probably be the right word to use.
Okay, it would be marginal. Because I would, honestly, I agree that code enforcement could probably use some help. I've never been critical of anybody individually. There are times when I think, and code officers will tell them, I would like to be more proactive. They'd say that themselves sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the city that beats up on its residences. I don't want to be the city that beats up on its businesses to get in compliance. Fining is one technique to do that, but that's not my objective. My objective is to have a better city, and fining is not necessarily the way we do that.
Sure, and that is our philosophy. It's part of our mission. That is our philosophy. We want compliance. If we never had to issue another citation forever, that'd be great, but that's not a reality. We do need those tools in the toolbox, which we have, and that is a tool. But that's our goal is compliance, and it's just one way to get there, but often it's an effective way, to be quite honest, when we hit them in their pocketbooks, quite frankly.
It depends on who you're dealing with.
Sure.
Okay.
So that's how we envision for code.
Other questions about this or any other on the police department list? Okay.
Thank you.
Parks?
You know, I always feel bad for you because it seems like when we do our cutting, you take the brunt of it every year. But you know what? That's your own fault for being so good at being able to do more with less.
Well, we try to be a good team player, right? Susan Lavala, Parks and Recreation Director. There's not a whole lot of changes. I think one of the things we discussed, and I don't know if it's reflected correctly in this slide, but Alan and I had a conversation about instead of doing the infields on fields 1, 2, and 3 and doing one outfield, that maybe we just do one whole field a year. We have 11 of them, 11 years. By the time we get to the 11th field, we'll need to start back at 1 again and just put it into our, regular maintenance replacement on that project. So that would be, if you take 32.5 and the 65, divide those 3 fields by 3, I think it comes to like $76,000. I'm not a math major, but about $76,000, I think, to do one field a year, which would renovate one entire ball field. So that's the big change. We discussed the turf machine for the field. It pays for itself in about 18 months in labor
And we can use it
savings,
for a lot of years.
Yes, so.
Okay.
But I can answer any other questions if you have them.
We're still using the outfields for soccer.
We are. We certainly are.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Those
I always
field
hated that when I
renovations,
was
those all go out to bid, is that right?
They do.
Are those possible, or have you ever thought about working with some of the other municipalities to see if you guys can put together a package? I know Edgewater and New Smyrna has been doing a lot of stuff together. I'm just curious if there might be some savings there too.
So after the last meeting, I did reach out to South Daytona. Greg happened to be on vacation. He's not coming back till Monday. to talk to him also about the turf machine. So once I have a chance to talk to him, I have some additional information as time goes
Okay.
on. But right now, that would make the most sense, would be for South Daytona.
Yeah.
Kind of partner up with them and, okay.
We're not talking big money to begin with, but anything you do to make it even more efficient, we appreciate.
Hey, Susan, would you
Yes.
run those numbers by me real quick again? You're saying that if you were to do one field a year, 11 years, infield renovations, that affects the infield renovations center fields 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, so infield renovations, that 32,000 is for 3 fields.
Okay,
So if
so
you divide
divide
that
that
by
by three.
3, I think it's,
11,000.
yeah, and then 65,000 is sodding 1 field, so that would give us total cost per field.
My only concern with that is,
Yeah.
so if we do that, then you've got a couple of fields there. Are they gonna be okay for another 2 or 3 years to get kicked down the road? You know what I mean?
So I know I've had this conversation with Councilman Tremont before, but so we build our fields for recreational purposes.
Mhm.
So it depends on who you are on those fields. If you're a travel ball player, if you're a high school player, you know,
Little
the standard's going to be a little low in your mind. But we definitely build them for the recreational user. That's who we provide the fields for. However, they do get used by a lot of different people.
Okay.
So I believe that our fields would be okay for us to continue to
Okay.
get done. We still do maintenance to them. We just did new clay bricks at Karasi this week. So we're still doing the maintenance we have to do on them. It's just trying to get them all leveled out again and stuff after 30 years. City Center almost 30 years. So that's a long time. So.
What else we got?
Nice.
Have you really been doing so much with so little for so long, you're now qualified to do anything with nothing?
No pickleball requests?
Not this year.
I'll just point out that she's very dedicated. She actually was in Tampa today, throwing out the first pitch at a major league game between the Tampa Bay, was it the
Do
Yankees?
we have any video of that?
Do we
Red
have that on
Sox.
film?
Was it a strike?
Can we see can we please view that?
Got to see the replay.
Hey, and the Rays won.
Yeah, they did.
This particular slide, council has not changed from last time, but Jamie or Lynn can address those items if you have any additional questions.
Here's,
Oh, this is the exact same. Okay.
Same slide, no change.
when we're getting into IT, I always think it's interesting when we have to make policy decisions on things that, and we rely on our experts, our department heads to guide us, particularly things like IT. They might have a chance of snowing us with technobabble a little bit more, but there's some things that make sense, there's some things that don't. And we all know that there are cities paying money because of ransomware right now.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And that's that is a concern. Now, the other thing that I think is interesting is being able to have the ability to do workshops at the Parks and Rec building really does mean we should have the AV technology to do that. I don't think that's a huge commitment, but all the same,
Yeah.
I would not feel good about having workshops there, even if it is the best place to do it for certain types of workshops. It is a very accessible building, and certainly would like to be able to take advantage of that.
Mayor, are you talking about the $6,000?
Yep.
I think that was cameras for the annex, and Jamie's going to come up because we had a conversation about this today. I don't know how much we want to get into this today, but it is based on a decision that we're still trying to work through with council on what to do, but Jamie can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so preparing the budget is also always a timing balance. So of course we put things in our budget to try to time when the best time to purchase something is. So this was put in a little earlier in our process when we were moving forward on the topic of closed captioning. What do we do with live stream? What don't we do? So I know at this point we're still discussing that and considering direction on that. So, as far as not dazzling you with technobabble, this would be considered a desirable item, of course, but depending on what direction we moved with our technology and broadcast, could potentially be an item that may be better suited to purchase in the following fiscal year once we resolve that item.
Okay. Well, still, that's the goal. I mean, this board, we've had joint meetings with the Parks and Rec Board. It'd be nice to be,
It would be great, absolutely, which is why we included it.
and you have other boards, city boards that could utilize it as well. A lot of different reasons for that, but there you go.
Yes.
Timing is everything.
Timing, sir.
I did have two questions, Jamie.
Yes, ma'am.
The additional costs related to the new position, your information security administrator.
Yes, ma'am.
That's $4,200. Can you talk about what?
Sure, absolutely. This is a position that hopefully we look for
Right.
every opportunity to promote internally if we have a qualified candidate. So this is a position that we do feel that we would need additional training dollars to ensure that the person is appropriately, not to mention the standard new computer. We don't have a workstation for this person, so we would have to budget to spend a couple of dollars on those.
Okay, actually I have three questions because I have a
Sure.
follow-up to this one.
Absolutely.
Last week when they were talking about it, and I get the position. Given that this is such a hot issue in private business as well as governments, what is our ability to recruit at this salary?
I imagine it will be a challenge, if I'm honest. And that's an item that we wrestle with a lot of our technical positions is how do we place it in our internal grading structure where it sits appropriately in relevance to other positions. And sometimes that doesn't meet the mark of what we need to be able to attract the type of talent that we need from the outside. So we do sometimes intend to grow our own internally when we cannot meet our needs externally.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question is the multi-factor authentication.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
get it. But the note I had from last week is they hope to add it to the Workday system. So my question is, given that Workday is going to be so new, do we really know if we can add it next year, or is this something that should slide out one more year?
I do believe that we will be able to add that next year on the Workday. Yes.
So they've talked about it.
Yes, they
Workday
have.
says we have this other add-on capability.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sure Workday wants to sell us all sorts of add-ons. What else we got?
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
I know, Mayor, you'd referenced that as a Parks and Rec building, but I'm sure Lynn would probably want to have that as also the Public Works building. But do you have any questions for her on her forklift?
Well, I don't know. Forklift is a forklift. I think it was pretty cut and dry. Any questions? Do we need to bring our other celebrity food judge up? For those of you that don't know, Lynn and Jamie and I were celebrity judges for a event at Atria this afternoon. So we spent a little bit of time over there. There was a food competition between their chef and the chef from Red Robin, and we got to blind judge which one was better. And then when we were done, all the residents there got to sample the wares, and it was actually quite cool to spend a little time over there.
Who was
with all
better,
those
Red
residents.
Robin or Atria?
They were both good. Well, let's put it this way: my judge's sheet said 5.0 for one, on a scale of 1 to 5, and the other was 4.99. So,
Okay.
hey, we're talking about two high-end Port Orange chefs here, so.
All right.
The final subject here then, Council, is to go through the capital requests in the 317 fund. The items are the same, some of the dollars have changed, and the one thing we've added at the bottom there is $1,150,000 for the purchase of Dave's Pest Control. As Council remember, there is an offer, or not an offer, but a
Contract.
option on that property. It expires next April, I believe.
So, and that does not necessarily, that's a balance sheet transaction, that's not income related.
Correct.
Any questions about any items on this list? This is the list I was more or less talking about, that if we concentrate on ad valorem, with the a la cartes, and then we, as money comes in, we can, from FEMA, we can allocate to some of these things. That's my thought as far as an approach. Unless there's something you see on this list that we feel like you have to do effective October 1st, the beginning of the fiscal year. Of course, there'll be money coming in between now and October 1st.
And just for your reference, council, the first item there was 414, it's now 200. Number 4 there, the city hall repurposing, that's, was 275, is now 125.
How did that occur?
Reverse engineering.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the
Gotcha.
training
Value
tower,
engineering.
we had that, it was wrong at 283, it should be 108. The resurfacing there, it's $100,000 and looking for the causeway first. That's more critical. And then the public works admin HVAC, from 329 to 200.
Okay. And does that wrap you up?
That wraps me up, Mayor.
Okay, before we get into deliberations, I think that we've been at it for about an hour and a half. I think we should take about a 10-minute recess, and then we come back. We are in what I was discussing with Dr. Niels is kind of take the approach of, we go through this on the spreadsheet, the list of, on the a la cartes. I think we've all pretty much agreed to, unless I'm making an assumption that the a la cartes, we work on funding out of the monies that we're working on right now, and then we take a look at the CIP items later as we get dollars in.
I'm gonna disagree.
Okay.
I'm gonna be looking for more of a hybrid model of that.
Okay.
I think there's some one-time expenditures here that we can earmark out of some of the FEMA dollars when they come in. And then some of the other ones maybe we can do like you're proposing. So a little bit more of a hybrid model for me.
Okay. That's fine. What I want to do is try to, is one of three things is going to come about. For example, we start with the a la carte requests. You're going to have a yes, you're going to have a no, or you're not ready. And what I would like to do is between now and Tuesday, if we have a consensus for no, we can drop those items right away. If we have a yes, we know what we're moving forward. If we're not ready to decide, we can leave those in and either drop them on Tuesday or drop them later. Because quite frankly, there's some things that I haven't decided on. Or we can discuss, like custodian in the police department. I'd like to help with that, but I think that progressively that would be a part-time thing for me. But we can see what kind of consensus we can come up with, and then we can figure out where we're at as far as an ad valorem rate, and then kind of move from there.
I gave my sheet to Jake last week.
Why?
Because I thought that's when it was supposed to come in. Oh boy.
You gave your sheet away?
I did.
Mayor,
Yes.
I guess I would
there we
offer a
go.
different proposal.
Okay.
You want to start with the a la carte and back into what we're spending, and I think Councilman Tremont made a very pithy statement last week when he said, why don't we start with what we want to spend and then look at the things that we can afford within that. And I think that's an alternative approach. I think it's reasonable. And one of the things in the budget document, you know, there's this statement that we don't want to drop service levels. Well, service levels don't necessarily equate to budgetary increases. There are principles as doing less with more, working smarter, not harder. There are certainly things in last year's budget that departments got that if they got it, that piece of equipment, or they did that particular expenditure, this year they should be able to get something else out of that. And I guess I'm suggesting that it is a philosophical question that I think council should look at. Do you start with the tail or do you start with the dog? And I get a little bit of a feeling that the tail's wagging the dog with all these a la carte. We come to the same result, but maybe we need to have a conversation as to what makes sense about what we think we're prepared to authorize the burden on the taxpayer.
And Marilyn, I would just comment that we did that for a couple of years, and I don't know if it was 3 or 4, Jake's first year, we went up till really late, 2 days before the absolute deadline, because what happened was we picked an arbitrary number, and then when we saw what that was going to equate to in terms of what's getting cut, what loss of services and all those things, there was a lot of stress on the dais for sure.
We
So-
made those decisions September 26th instead
right.
of in July.
And then what happened was the following year, because of how that went, I think we did that 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
The following year, Jake said, okay, instead of doing that, we'll let you look at each individual item and you could weigh out, what does that mean? Do you really feel like that's needed right now, and is the support there for it? And we approach it that way the last year for sure. But
I think
yeah,
too,
you're right. We can do it either way.
And I think too that if we go through the a la carte, there are a lot of things that we we say yes, no, or I don't know to right away, and we can see what that gap is. Because right now, we don't, until the five of
Okay.
us discuss it, we don't know what that gap is. Because quite frankly, and it's entirely possible, I may see that number once we know where we're at and say, great, now we know where the starting point is. And, you know, I don't know, I just think we need to know what that gap is and then go from there.
And one, if I can just mention one more concern, because I think Marilyn's right to be, this is definitely a night to be having a philosophical discussion, because we're not making a
Absolutely.
hard decision tonight, and it's, unfortunately, Jake's not here. Not that Alan, you're doing great, but the other concern I have too is, you know, if we're going to, if there's a particular number the council has in mind, and I'm sure all individually we do, I also want to make sure that we give the city manager the opportunity to be able to look at that and go and reprioritize things, I guess is what I'm saying. So I don't want to, you know, I'd hate to see us all say collectively as we're going through this, you know, that's a no, that's a yes, and then Jake not have a little bit of management room in there to go, okay, well, this was the number they gave me. Critically, I got to look at these now and reprioritize some stuff, and yeah, I'll kick that one to next year and ask for it again, or whatever. So,
Well, and I think that's the
for
idea.
discussion, just keep that.
We're not setting the budget tonight.
Sure, that's
We're
right.
setting a max millage, which I'm gonna tell you, we set a max millage with last year that there's no way in heck that we would ever gonna adopt as a budget. And it's probably gonna be similar this year. I think that max millage, it's a starting point,
Sure.
not an ending by any means or stretch of the imagination. At least it isn't for me. That's it, whatever we set, whatever we get to for a max millage, based on the things we knock out and still have left, I think that we can start the real conversations from there. I don't know. Drew, you haven't chimed in yet.
Well, in looking at all this, I did get my sheet back. You know, we kind of have a starting point with the turn the page, and then we got to take all these a la carte things. But I don't want to go through like we did 2 years ago, where we kept going back and forth. Well, I can do this and that. So we got to come up with something that will, you know, we can all live with, knowing that we're simply just not going to be able to provide everything.
Chase?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a quick night for me. I mean, I've made my position pretty clear, you know, throughout this process, and I agree with Drew. I don't wanna go through what we did a couple years ago. It wasn't the right thing to do to management, and it wasn't the right thing to do to staff, and I can appreciate that. That's why I like to come in with more of a shotgun approach. You know, with where I'm at, I want to see what we have to spend and then go with it. From going forward, I like to take my increases from whatever the rate of inflation is. And rate of inflation for 2019, 1.9, then 2.0 2020, 2.0 for 2021. That's about where I'm going. Now, to fulfill our contractual obligations, I would go into fund balance to do that, to be honest with you. But I think at the end of the day, the public has told us with their feet, with their pen, that they don't want any more increases. Now, we can conjecture whether or not it was due to a trust factor or they just didn't want any more taxes, but those are conjectures. The fact is, they said no. So that's, so even by going, with the rate of inflation increase, it is still more than what's the public's told us by now. But I think that's reasonable. I don't think the average taxpayer is disappointed in that mindset. Now, it's hard because I've got professionals up there that do what they do that are terrific. I think our staff is, our department heads and our staff is, put them against anybody in the county, anyone in the state. So it's a very hard thing to say no to the professionals that are telling us what they need and to do their job. So it's not an easy situation to be in, but nevertheless, my constituents, I never hear from them. That's just me personally. I never hear from them. I want more services. So it's going to be a simple one for me.
Okay. Chase, just to make sure we're all on the same page, we cannot use fund balance for contractual obligations. Those are not one-time purchases.
It's also
Can't do
a
it.
bad
Those are reoccurring
accounting
costs.
practices. It's a horrible accounting practice to use your savings account to pay for recurring costs.
You're kicking it down the road that way.
Well, we got a lot of one-time expenditures.
Yeah,
Well,
but
I
you
was just
can't-
talking about contractual obligations.
can't
I got
use
it,
it for
but
contract.
If that's gonna lead us to where we can't afford it for this year, there are still one-time expenditures that would balance it out the following year. My position is, we spent, we're at almost $500,000 on a transport system that I was adamantly opposed. So if I continue to agree to more expenditure, then I'm in a sense supporting that. That's just where I'm coming from. I'm looking at ways to use that, to be honest with you.
Well, and so let's differentiate. When you said fund balance to pay those things, when you have one-time costs, you can apply fund balance to that as long as we maintain a reasonable fund balance, and we've set our policy at 30%. But if you're paying out of your savings account for recurring costs for things like payroll,
No,
you are
you
setting
can't do
yourself
that.
up for a huge tax increase down the road.
Not suggesting to do that. What I'm saying is if what our current needs are going to be in excess of what we have, well, you got two choices. You're either gonna pay for it, well, three choices. You're either gonna increase the millage, or you're gonna cover that difference of fund balance and let those one-time expenditures even it out the following year, or you gotta cut back on some services. And this has not been a council that has demonstrated that we're willing to cut back on services. No disrespect in it, it's just.
Right. And I think that goes exactly to
Position.
what Marilyn was talking about a little bit ago, and that's what I was getting at, is we've done this both ways. And if we're gonna cut back on services, we need to have that discussion at the dais as to what are we gonna cut?
Right.
But you mentioned the vote was, overwhelmingly no new taxes, but I would venture to think that if you said we're reducing services because of that, in relation to that, they're gonna say absolutely not. The same overwhelming amount of people would say, no, I don't want you to reduce my services.
Maybe.
And I think
Definitely.
that gets into the other thing here we're going to task Jake with is if you're way off, and you can't go back and say go
Yeah.
and find me some efficiencies in the budget.
Yeah.
If you're close, he can do that, and we can task him to do
Yeah.
that, and that's his job. He should do that.
Yeah.
He's got smart people working for him.
Yeah.
He should be able to do that. But if we're if we don't have the starting block, if I get down and say, okay, we're 3% over, and I really want to be at rollback, I want to be able to challenge Jake to go find the rest. But I think what we need to do is find out what that gap is tonight,
Let's do it.
find out what that number is, and then find out how close we are.
But I disagree respectfully, of course,
Yeah.
that if you cut back services, people are gonna complain. It's always gonna be, people are gonna complain, about something.
You
There'll be a
don't-
lot of people that will suggest.
If you cut
making-
public safety, they're
reducing.
gonna complain. If you cut garbage to 1 day a week, they're gonna complain.
Maybe,
No,
some will,
it-
some will,
no,
but there'll be a
it-
lot of people that have asked me, well, why are you picking up garbage twice a week? Why are you adding more cops? We're second safest state in the safest city in the state. Why are you adding transport? County already does it. So you make an argument for both sides. I'm just making the point.
Did you see
There's
the-
an argument on the other side.
Did you see the article where they're already scaling back the EMS
But they're still
overhaul?
increasing services. They might scale
They're-
back from
they're-
what
they're
was
scaling
proposed
back
to
the overhaul.
increase, but it's still an increase.
Let's start with the a la carte items and the non-departmental items, pension plans, consulting services.
Mayor, before we do that, I'm sorry, on this item though, I am gonna calculate automatically as if you guys decide up here tonight that you wanna cut, add, take away. I'll calculate so we can tell us as we go where we
What our
are.
running total is.
And I've got some other people in the audience doing the same thing, so I wanna make sure we're starting from the same list
Yeah.
before you go forward, because one of the things that we discussed was when Susan was up here, was to go back to doing one field a year, which would, it's line 37 in that spreadsheet, change it from 32,500 to 10,833. Is that something that council's willing to start off with before we go?
We'll let you know when we get there and discuss it.
All right.
I would say, yeah.
I'm not gonna,
Do we
All right.
need to be-
let's take it one by one.
All right.
Non-department pension plans, consulting services. opinions before I run down the dais?
That's a good investment to get into. I just wonder, is there even an interest on the other, with the appropriate unions? Or is this, is there an interest to do that? I wouldn't want to put this expenditure out there and go through the legwork of doing this study if there's just no interest.
Well, Chase,
That'll
this
be
is in
something
regards to FRS.
I know.
To go
I
into
know.
FRS, and it would be from, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, it'd be from whatever date forward, right? Would that conversion include that, or would it include the buy-in to put the,
My understanding would include the buy-in.
that's millions of dollars,
No,
potentially.
buy-in.
Yeah, it's not gonna ever.
Are you talking about the 70, what's the $75,000 for?
No, I know the 75 is
Yeah.
for the,
That's just the study.
Study.
the study to
Right.
go to FRS.
Yeah.
And then after that, we could be looking at, depending on the degree of who wants to go and who doesn't, you
Mhm.
could be looking at
Whether you just
tens
do
of
new
millions of
hires,
dollars.
yep.
Yeah,
That's
it
what
really,
the study will say.
it really depends on what you do. A lot of cities that do this, what they'll do is they'll buy down some unfunded liability,
Okay,
and they'll put that in a pension obligation bond. Rates are going down.
yeah.
The other thing I think about when I think about this is that if the state does come and change the law and not allow cities to join FRS anymore, this may never be an option for you if they decide to do that next
Yeah.
legislative session.
And that, I mean, that could come up every year, really.
It could, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So in the end, I know that when I studied at least one of the unions, there were a portion of the people in that union that this would actually be more benefit to them,
Yeah.
less cost for the city overall over time.
But,
There's so many factors to consider. That's
Yeah.
why,
But
we'd
this
have an actuary.
75K pertains to just the study to do
Just
it.
the
So
study.
that's
Well,
what we're.
this
yeah.
pertains to just the study and actually moving them over. It doesn't include the cost of what it would be if you decided
I
to
gotcha.
take pension obligations.
The
Understood.
study will tell us what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the attorney would help us with the ordinance and make sure
Sure.
we're moving along on progress.
Okay, when I ask you guys what you think of this, it's either a yes or no, or you're not ready. Those are your three answers. Any other comments before I run down?
I'm
Scott?
I'm not on board with your three answer selection there.
Okay, well,
Yes or no,
what are your
right?
options?
Yes or no?
I'd like to be able to say that we can earmark some of these one-time expenditures with fund balance.
Well, anything that, okay.
I mean, when you look at all these one-time expenditures, you're at about
Okay.
$400,000. You've got 2.8 million that's coming back from FEMA.
Yes,
over the
no,
next
not
18
ready,
months.
or fund balance in the future.
So,
Well, I tend to agree with Councilman Stiltner that one-time expenditures, which I saw a number of them, we could easily take fund balance and apply for those.
Okay.
And I think as a general rule, even on some of the other capital items, when it's a 1 year, it's easier for me to make a decision, yay or nay on, than those things that we know go on multi-year. I think that's where, you gotta think long and hard about, is this the year to do it, or is another year better?
Yeah.
and to that also, where, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, you're projecting, currently we have about 500,000 over our 30%. So theoretically,
At
we're
the
at
current
about
rate.
3.2 million in fund balance overage, assuming we get everything back from FEMA over that 18-month period of time. So I think there's enough time there for some one-time coverage on these a la cartes and some capital.
So if
And
we-
that assumes the current
options
rate.
that- As we go, yes, no, not ready.
Or fund balance.
Or fund balance, and if we don't have a consensus, we leave it as
leave it for
is
now.
until, and we'll,
Mayor, I would like to throw one other thing out. I
Uh-oh.
think that, no, in terms of the FEMA money back, I, in my mind, am not willing to commit or designate that solely to CIP items. I think we were told, by virtue of the failed recent referendum, that our citizens want roads, sewers,
well, we would
and water.
decide which of those CIP
But,
items we.
but some of those aren't on the CIP that was presented to us this year, but I would like to see some of that FEMA money go to those items that have been on the task list or in the comprehensive plan, because I think the citizens, that's
those-
a way to give the money back to the citizens.
Those are all in the CIP. Whether it's funded or not, those things are all in the CIP.
Okay,
Yeah,
So we,
in
if
the
we,
big book.
we can decide which CIP
Yeah,
items
okay.
get, yeah, absolutely.
That's
I'm with
another
you.
conversation.
I'm with you.
And I think as a strategy from a financial perspective, if you go ahead and do the yes, no, maybe so, if we get, fund balance back, I think financially what we would do is we would literally unfund those from the budget, keep them in a list during the year, and then that way we'd come back to and amend the budget if we get that revenue in. So you wouldn't see it in this year's budget. We just have that list going forward.
We'll see some budget resolutions. Okay,
So we've added a fourth
yes,
option.
no, not ready to decide, or you'd prefer to fund it through fund balance.
Okay.
Pension plan, start at Scott.
I'm willing to keep that on the list for fund balance.
Drew?
No.
Chase?
I'm also on the list for fund balance.
Marilyn?
No.
And I am a no. Strategic plan update. Comments on that one? Personally, I don't think that next year being an election year with 2 seats up, and the fact that our old strategic plan is not even 5 years old yet, that timing wise, I think this is something that should be done, but not necessarily in this fiscal year. It's my opinion. Any other comments?
I'd agree.
I can live with that.
Yep, I'm good with that.
Well, in that case, start with you, Scott.
No.
Drew?
No.
Chase?
No.
Marilyn?
Nope.
And I'm a no. Management analyst, comments?
I think it would be more prudent to either use an intern or make a 3 or 6 month hire. I've seen where the other department heads have lagged the time that they would hire people, and I would suggest that the city manager should do the same.
Yeah, me personally, I think, I agree with the timing. Whether we decide to do it or not, it certainly doesn't afford itself to full years of funding, even if we decide to do that.
My concern with that also is the market competitiveness for that position. I think
Yeah.
it's actually a little light. I share Marilyn's concern as well, but just doing just a little bit of a research there, I'm not sure that this wouldn't be the similar thing we got into with the police crime analyst, where we found
That's
out
right.
we couldn't fill it because
Money-wise,
just
it
won't meet
wasn't there.
a competitive budget.
Yeah,
And whoever we do hire has to have the attitude that I need to find ways to pay for my position,
All right.
Yeah.
year in and year out.
I think I could put that request off for 1 more year.
Any other comments? I'll go ahead and go down the line. Scott?
I'm a no.
Drew, you said you're a no?
Yeah, I'd say push it back a year.
Yeah, I agree. Chase?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yes, no?
No.
You're a no? Marilyn?
No.
I'm a no as well.
Right.
City attorney, new position, actually reclassification.
I'm a yes.
I'm a yes. Actually, I think the total, Scott, is what, a little over 10 grand to do
Yes.
both of the requests out of the city attorney's office?
Yes.
Yeah, Mayor, if you want to parlay those together, I'm a yes for both.
Anybody have a problem with go ahead and parlaying those together?
I'm
Okay,
good
then
with
I will
that.
ask for your comment. Scott, you said you're a yes
I'm
for
a
both?
yes. Yep.
Drew, you're a yes for both?
Yes, sir.
Chase?
No.
Marilyn?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Scott. You got a blank one of these by chance, don't you?
I do not.
Okay, don't worry, no big deal.
Admin services, HR training coordinator.
I'll destroy this thing.
And that was funded for half a year as proposed. Comments? No comments? Start with you, Scott.
Hey, you gonna start with me all night?
Start with Marilyn.
Out of
Yes.
Marilyn's a yes. hold on, I'm in different order here.
Again, Mayor, is that a yes for both?
Yeah, let's,
Yes for
Yes.
both
we
for the
parlay
city attorney.
both, yeah.
Training core, I'm sorry, admin services, both items together, that's what we're, correct, Marilyn, you're a yes?
Yes.
Chase?
No.
Drew?
I'd say yes.
Scott?
I'm a yes for now on that, leaving that one on the list.
Well, and I would, any of these, you know, we decide yes on, we can always go backwards later when we need to do additional trimming.
Or when we see, yeah, how much it's gonna actually cost.
And I'm a yes for now also. So just letting staff know, a yes today isn't necessarily a yes. And Jamie smiles as we say that. Police Department, 1 by 1, 4 officers. Comments?
Well, I appreciate the need, the fact that we've been carrying 7 vacancies. I think this is a place that we can put off for another year because I think the chief has made the case for some of the other ones. I'm more comfortable that way, so I'm a no for police.
And of course, when we say officers, gear, equipment, vehicles all together, okay. Chase?
No.
Scott?
Yeah, I'm gonna be a no as well. I just think that, you know, and I would encourage the chief to bring this back to us next year. I'd like to see him come back with us next year and just feel, you know, maybe have 1 or 2 vacancies and have shown a little bit of stability. It's such a long process to get somebody hired and out on the road doing the job that I think that their hands are full, and I don't want to push them too hard on trying to, you know, give 4 more positions and push that. But
All of a
that's just,
sudden-
it's just gonna be a lot right now. So I just, I'd rather try to find ways to try to help the chief and the PD right now to achieve the ability to hire quality people and stabilize and retain.
Okay. Drew?
I'm a yes.
You're consistent. I am a no. And mostly for the same reasons. I think that we need to get a whole lot closer to full staffing and get through all that training with what we need to add right now. CSO, comments? This is the one where we want somebody in the front office.
It's a civilianization effort, which will put a sworn officer on the street. I think it's a smart plan. I mean, I don't want to add personnel, but I think the chief is making a very reasonable suggestion.
Any other comments?
I would echo that. My experience having somebody at that front window, especially if they're really good at their job, helps keep cops on the street. Because if not, what's happening is they're having to come in off the street to handle services at the front PD, which many times can be handled at that level. So I would support that and be a yes at this time.
Okay. Any other comments? I'll run down.
No,
Okay, I'll take, if there, I'll take the comments and I'll take the actual vote.
okay, yeah, because I'm looking at it this way, I want to see the boots on the ground, I want to give them the 4, that's my thought. So.
Mhm. And honestly, I think there's when you're trying to build up your front line, you want to make sure that they have the proper support as as we continue to build that organization. Okay, we'll start with Marilyn on this one.
I'm a
CSO.
yes.
Chase,
I am a yes.
Drew,
Yeah, I'm a no, because I want to give him the 4 officers that he asked for.
Scott,
I'm a yes.
and I'll go yes. Reclass evidence technician to evidence supervisor. Comments? Okay, well then I will just call the vote. Marilyn?
Yes.
Sure, I'm on the right line here. Chase?
No.
Drew?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Custodian. Me personally, I'd like to see this a part-time position, but I mean, does anybody have an argument that they'd like to see this as a full-time position?
I'd
Or-
like to see the cost difference on the part-time.
Just say half.
Well, then you can,
Just be half, right?
you can take the, not ready to make a decision based on that.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Not with an exact number, but it would be a little bit less than half because of less benefits for a half-time.
Yeah. So you can use a half number and then adjust it later.
Yes, sir. If that's your wish.
Anybody have an objection for, us calling a vote on that as a part-time position?
Well, we can always go down.
Yeah.
I
That's
really
true.
want to think about this because I think the chief made a good point. That building is used 24/7, and you don't want to run down your building. So I really want to think about, you know, does a full-time versus I'd like to think about it a little more.
Okay. So, not ready?
Not ready.
And then let's get those numbers ready, so that when we're ready, if we consider it a part-time. Chase?
I'll put a yes for now.
Are you doing part-time or full-time, Mayor?
Full-time.
We're evaluating it as a full-time,
Okay.
but we're, maybe making some decisions, who knows? Drew?
I'd say yes to a part-time.
So, not ready to commit to a full-time.
That'd be accurate.
Okay. Scott?
I'll go not ready.
I too am not ready for the same reason Marilyn mentioned. So we'll leave that in for now. And I would put the instruction to staff be ready with the part-time numbers versus what the full-time numbers might be.
And I guess I would ask the chief to think about, you know, really the part-time versus the full, what it would mean. Because he
Okay.
did seem to suggest with a part-time, well, maybe he could overlap and get some benefit out of that, so. It's not just about the numbers, can they keep the building at a
Right.
good level?
Okay. Code enforcement.
You packaging the employees and the vehicles? Could we do that?
I'm gonna say no to do that, because I think,
Okay,
the vehicles are gonna be one-time purchasables.
okay, that's reasonable.
So you're
For
gonna,
sure.
could potentially be, that's a good point, you could be paying for the vehicles out of a different source.
Okay.
I, for one, think that code enforcement needs stepped up, but I think 3 at one time, I don't know, I just prefer a more progressive approach to problem solving. If you add one, it doesn't do it, then you add another, if it doesn't do, I don't know, that's just my thoughts. This is something that has not grown in probably 2 decades of staffing. So it certainly, I do think that, based on this, growth of the city does require addressing, but personally, I'd like to do 1 instead of 3, but that's just me.
That's kind of what my thought was, is to let's start with 1, and, so I'd be a yes on the position, and then fund the vehicle that's gonna be needed out of fund balance.
Drew, what are your
Get that
thoughts?
going.
I was thinking, give him 2. That would be my thing, and then we could, the vehicles come up with another source.
Chase, what are your thoughts?
I'm a no.
No to adding any code enforcement?
Correct.
Okay. Marilyn, what are your thoughts?
I think I like staggering it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm torn between 1 versus 2 because I do like the idea of giving the chief somebody for commercial.
One of the things we can do is fund 1 position and fund half a position, start it later in the year too. And I think if we consider doing that, we probably shouldn't decide tonight anyway. I think with that in mind, maybe we leave this in there with a max of 2 with that contingency so that Scott can maybe look at what 1 would cost or 1.5 would cost. as we make a decision moving forward. So make our decision with 2 full-times. And I'll call the vote that way on just the officer. 2 full-time positions. Marilyn?
Yes.
I guess I should write this down as I go. 2. Drew?
Yeah, I already said yes to 2,
You're
yep.
yes. Chase?
No. Who said it?
Scott?
Said yes.
I'm a no on 2. I'm willing to do 1.
So you're 1. And I'd like to do 1 as well, so I think that we leave it in with 2 and kind of, this is one where we are going to make a decision later.
So Mayor, just to clarify, you want us to leave 2 in there as a max and then decide later?
Well, none of us want 3.
Yeah.
Some of us want 2, some of us want 1, some of us want 1.5, so the max there is 2.
Okay.
So I think we leave that there as 2. There's no need to put the additional funding in there for something that none of us are considering.
Right.
So go ahead and take that out, knowing that we'll probably be backing out further, and then you can be prepared with that half-year number, if that's what we decide on, or whether it's just 1 or whatever.
And then I know you're going down to the code enforcement officer vehicles, which would match the 2 versus 1 again, depending on what you want to do there. The only caveat I have there, and Dr. Niels, correct me if I'm wrong, the original first purchase of the vehicle, yes, could come from one time, but then every year there is an operating cost to replace those vehicles. So there is a knock on the general fund.
Usually the full cost of the first year purchase comes out of operating.
Yeah.
That's our policy, and then it goes to the equipment replacement, then they get allocated back. So at the end of that life, of that period, they've got the money in there
Right.
to get another one.
And that comes from the department every year, correct?
Yes, it comes out of the department budget.
So the department budget would increase every year, not increase every year, but it would increase because they've got 2 more vehicles to replace. So there would be an impact on the general fund in out years.
In the year that they purchased originally.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they just have whatever the annual replacement
The
cost.
the
is.
lease repayment to the
But-
fleet fund, yeah.
Council can change that. They could fund it outright from fund balance. And that-
Well,
the
we're
pol-
talking
the
about
policy
2
is
vehicles
that we
now
do it-
instead of 3 for one thing. Scott, you were talking about doing that out of fund balance. Is that how you're leaning?
Yeah, I think at least for this
Whether it be
initial
1 or
purchase.
whether it be 2? I think we leave it in 2 for now. Drew, what are your thoughts?
That, same as Scott, you know, can't say outright yes to that if we don't know the number that we're getting up top, so.
Yeah, we're not ready.
Yeah,
Fund balance / not ready, so we leave it in. So you're the same?
correct.
Chase?
No.
I guess that's consistent. If you're not gonna authorize the officers, you don't need the trucks. Marilyn?
Not ready.
Okay. I concur, not ready. So leave it in as 2 vehicles.
I'm keeping the tab here. What do you got for all of us for the first one?
We're not ready to make a decision, or we're looking at it out of fund balance, but there are more, too many not readies to say one way or the other. All right. We're getting into a whole bunch of things in fire.
Just take it line 1 by 1.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
There's just too many, it's, you
Well,
know.
I think bed frames, recliners, we can put together. Office chairs and desks we can put together, but other than that, I think, yeah, okay. Fire option number 3, no expansion in services, overtime for 6 months for weekend, Saturday, Sunday, 12-hour shift. It's only $15,000.
Correct.
I'm kind of surprised that number's not higher. I'm pleased that number's not higher, I should say. Comments on that?
Yeah, I think this is really a no-brainer. I mean, the success of the program, 280 transports already shows that there is a massive need for this. Probably one of the best things we've done on this dais in a long time for the welfare of our public. So I think being able to go to a Saturday, Sunday shift is not only reasonable, but definitely prudent.
So you are a yes?
I'm a yes.
Drew?
Absolutely, yes.
Chase?
I am a consistent no.
And Marilyn?
Yes.
And I am a yes. So that is a yes. Administrative assistant, comments or questions?
I want to say yes to that, but there's some other things that I definitely am ready to say yes to, so I might be not quite ready on the administrative assistant, because
Yeah.
I think there's some other needs that he's asking for that are out of line that we need to.
I can see where he would want one, and I'm kind of with you, Drew, that I want to say yes to a lot of other things. And in my mind, that's kind of where the horse trading comes from. But
Yeah.
that's just my thoughts.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Let's start at Marilyn's end.
No.
Chase?
No.
Drew?
I'm not ready on that one, because like I say,
Not ready.
I want to say yes to some other things coming
Okay.
up here.
Scott?
I'm a no.
And I am a no. So that's a no. Exercise equipment. Comments?
Fund balance.
I think that's an appropriate place for fund balance.
Scott?
I'm a fund balance.
Fund balance? Drew?
I'm a yes.
You're a yes. Yes, general fund or yes, fund balance?
Either way, he asked last year, and it's coming back this year, so it's something that's needed.
So we'll
So
increase millage for that is the decision. Fund
Check.
balance or
Chase?
I'm in the fund balance.
Marilyn?
Fund balance.
I concur. So it's a zero impact to the millage rate, but we
Right.
want, it's a
Okay.
yes with a funding source.
yeah,
Actually, could I make a comment relative to that and
Mm-hmm.
bed frames, recliners, office chairs, desks, equipment shipping? I would like to see the total of those numbers reduced and let the chief do some hard shopping and tighten the belt a little. I mean, I think all those things fit under fund balance, so I'm a yes in that respect. But I'd like to see a little bit of a reduction in the total cost
can.
of that and see if he can't squeeze that dollar.
I'd also, I would agree with that, and I would also, believe it or not, the recliners, you know, about 720 a pop, that's not bad, because you're getting a quality one that's gonna last. You're not here for another 10 years asking for that. But I think a lot of the stuff like office chairs and exercise equipment, I'd like to look at some gyms that have gone down, secondhand stuff.
Mhm.
A lot of offices are closed. I think there's a lot of things that you can get, quality things, possibly very, very inexpensive cost, in addition to just straight donations.
All right. Here's what I would suggest, is it sounds like bed frames, recliners, chairs, desks, and the shipping for those things, we can lump the decision all together that we're all looking to pay for those things out of fund balance, but we'd like to see some savings.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
that a consensus?
I would concur.
How about we do this then? We approve those numbers in aggregate minus 10%.
Are you including the truck in that, Mayor?
No.
Did that,
I'm good.
Chief, did those include shipping costs in that? That you're aware of?
I think the shipping line was separated out when,
It's
I don't wanna throw Scott and his team
Sure.
under the bus, but I
It's-
think they separated that out for some reason.
It
was-
is.
It was just a separate line for everything.
Okay.
Okay, consensus on lumping all those together out of fund balance minus 10%?
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
yes.
that's
Yes, yes,
better.
yes.
Yeah.
Fund balance minus. Okay. That brings us back to the truck for the inspector.
Fund balance.
That is where I think, I'm This is just me, I don't wanna get too crazy and hitting up our fund balance. Any other comments or questions, or I'll call for the vote? Marilyn?
I agree we need a truck for the person, but I have a problem moving, quite honestly, the vehicles to fund balance because they are ongoing. You know, at some point you're gonna have to replace them and they're gonna hit the operating budget, so I don't know where to park them, but.
Well, I guess, like you said, once they come out the one time, then every year it's added to the budget
Right.
to replace it 10 or 15 years down the road, the fleet fund, the maintenance fund,
Yeah.
lease replacement
What
fund, I
is
mean.
the ladder for vehicles? 5 years, 8 years?
I think. Is it 5 for pickups, or 8?
5.
We've had some go
Okay.
way past that.
Yeah.
And we've
Yeah.
had some that probably should have gone sooner.
Is this a brand new truck? Is it a used truck?
Usually they buy a new one,
Yeah.
because it got warranty on it.
Because of what?
Has a warranty
It'll
on
have
it.
a warranty, yeah.
State contract pricing is extremely reasonable.
Yeah, I'd like to put it in the fund balance at least for now until we find another
Yeah.
place to
And
pay for it.
Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, this would be a non-emergency response vehicle, so it wouldn't be lights and siren, right?
Stickered up, no emergency lights.
Okay, so it'd be normal wear and tear, not the added wear and tear of emergency response. Okay.
Okay.
I was this close to having you come up to say that. All right, let's run through it. Scott,
Fund balance.
Drew,
Yeah, I could go fund balance on this one.
Chase,
I am the same,
the same as what?
fund balance. I was sure
Because
thinking
you've been
about
saying
that.
no, so he wanted to make sure.
Marilyn?
Saying no to
Fund
everything.
balance.
I'm a yes, but I think it should come from the general, but that's me. Y'all got me on that one. And that brings us to parks. All right, we'll leave infielding, the infield renovations and resodding one outfield at a time for last, and we'll decide how to do that. Turf machine for fields.
Oh, we skipped one here. The equipment shipping, that's where the answer is, I guess.
No,
The other
I
stuff.
included it.
He included in there.
I got you. There's the answer, Chief.
Turf machine. Comments?
I
Okay.
think that's an appropriate fund balance purchase for sure.
Okay, Scott, that's your vote?
Yep.
Okay, Drew?
That'd be a yes on that.
Yes to what?
Yes
General
to-
fund or
to-
fund balance?
General fund, to give it, to get it.
Gotcha. Chase?
No, I put it at the fund balance for now.
Marilyn?
Fund balance.
And I think that should be a general fund, but looks like we're leaning towards fund balance on that one. I had 3-2. But we all liked it. HVAC replacement for adult center. Comments? Everybody agrees that air conditioning might be important?
Yes.
Okay. Scott?
Fund balance.
Drew?
However we could get it done.
Chase?
I'm also in the fund balance.
Marilyn?
Fund balance.
Only two ways, bro.
I concur.
You wanna raise taxes to do it, or you wanna pay for it out of fund balance?
Palm trees. This is not a one-time expense. This is an operating cost.
I'm gonna have to go with yes on that, Mayor, because I don't think it'd be right for our palm trees to be a violation of city codes if we're gonna be adding code enforcement folks. We probably ought to take care of our own trees.
I agree with that analogy completely.
I wholeheartedly agree.
I'd say that's general fund.
Chase?
I'd have to say yes, but just caveat, every time I say yes, I gotta say no to something else. So, but yes.
Don't worry, you got a lot of no's up there. But yeah. Marilyn,
Yes.
we all agree that palm trees should be trimmed.
Excellent point, Scott.
All right, we're talking about infield renovations and resodding one outfield. If, Alan, if we combine the two, you're talking about one of the three infield. So we're cutting that 32.5 by a third. Is that what you're talking about?
That is correct, Mayor. So that would bring that total to 19,000. Oh, sorry.
No,
I'd
no,
say
11,000.
10,833.
Yeah, 11K.
I was gonna say,
My mouse moved down one. Sorry. 10,833.
I was gonna say, that kind of math is gonna be really bad for our millage rate. You guys wanna consider it that way? Together, or do you wanna consider it separate, or not at all?
This is a tough one for me. 'Cause-
Opinions, we're not voting yet.
Yeah, no, this is just a tough one because I pushed hard, for this and a lot of conversations with Susan. But at the end of the day, this is one of those things that you see so often. You want something, you see the cost, the idea of, it is, for Parks and Rec, it's not, semi-pro, it's not professional standards, so, that's where we're gonna be at. I know for a fact, because of experience, it can be done much cheaper. I have a hard time paying that much for it. So I'll have to be a no, unfortunately, on that.
No to what?
Well, both of them.
Okay. Other comments or rundown, ideas?
I would just say you've got to have a plan to renovate. We're only trying to maintain a recreational standard. That's a minimum. I mean, you gotta renovate fields periodically, I think.
My problem with deferring maintenance is,
Well, this is
deferring
The maintenance
maintenance,
is gonna get more expensive.
this
Yeah.
has to get done
It has to be
Yep.
done.
at some point. If we say no and we're deferring maintenance, that carries a cost with it too. And you gotta be willing to bear that cost when the time comes.
we're talking about upgrading it though, not just
Infields,
renovating.
or the infields may be an
maintenance.
upgrade. The resodding the fields, that's maintenance. Otherwise, you just let them play on sand eventually. I think I've had enough of that at Southwinds. Do you want to consider the two together, or do you want to handle it separately? Tell you what, let's do
Together.
this.
Gotta be a basketball analogy in here somewhere, Coach.
Okay, let's do this. Let's take a look
I've
at the
seen you guys resurface the courts.
resodding one per year, and then we'll talk about how we want to do infield renovations, or if. Resodding,
Ooh.
That's good.
Scott?
Didn't
I'm sorry. Yes.
Drew,
Yeah, we have to take care of our assets. Yes.
Marilyn,
Yes.
Chase.
I'll be a yes for right now. I'll find something else to cut.
So we like maintaining our fields. Infield renovations,
Were you a yes, Mayor?
we have a yes on resodding.
Yeah.
We split them up. I was a yes.
Thank you.
We have consensus. Infield renovations, we can do this one of two ways. We can do them all at once, or we can split them up by year, or we can not do it at all. Those, I guess, are your three options.
Yeah, this is the one I was primarily talking about.
And this is a cost of 1132.3, so that's about 10,750 a year or so.
I wouldn't mind doing one with a fund balance. Now, you're gonna add some maintenance, but it should be easier to upkeep because it's gonna be better quality stuff. It'd be at about $8,000 for one field at a time. I'd look to put that in the fund balance.
11,000.
Yeah. It's basically 33,000.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 8 times 4.
What do you think? We split it up one per year? Let's do it that way. Let's take a vote that way. Doing one infield renovation this year.
Yes.
Marilyn? yes, no, fund balance, or not ready?
Yes.
Chase?
Fund balance.
Drew?
I'm a yes.
Scott?
Fund balance.
I'm a yes, but I'm trying to decide between fund balance and the general. I'm gonna say general fund for now. That might be one we go back and look at fund balance if we're looking for money later. So we're saying yes, general fund, 3-2.
But I also would like, you know, to try to cut that cost as much as possible. I don't know if there's an arrangement that can be made with, Susan, I know there's an arrangement that can be made with Spruce Creek, the amount of in-kind that we give to them. They have the experience of doing this already. Is that one of the ways that they can actually pay us back for the amount of services that we provide for them? I don't know if that's an option, but I'm throwing it out there.
Okay.
You know, we provide the, you know, the fire rescue at football games. We do
More.
waive a lot of
Anymore.
fees. Well,
No.
We charge
we've
them.
done a heck of a lot still. They
Right.
still owe us. And I'm not on staff anymore, so I can request a payment and not make my boss mad. But I still think there's a lot of stuff that we do with the schools that maybe there's a quid pro quo.
We'll definitely look into see what type of volunteer labor we can get. We'd still need to contract that out though for the equipment and expertise on building those fields over, basically.
And maybe it doesn't, we can't
And
do
it
it
does
at the
go
end
out
of
to
the day.
bid, so keep in mind, you know, it is going out to bid, so.
Yeah, they probably would not
Competitively
accept
bid.
volunteers.
Yeah, and so it will,
And
that
maybe
could
not.
lower
I
the
just wanna
price. We
throw
don't
it
know
out.
what it will come in at, it's just, it's an estimate.
Sure.
Susan, are there economies of scale? The reason I was hesitating is, you know, I almost would like to do 3. And do it out of fund balance this year. This is what I'm sort of thinking.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
not
we
big money.
don't do anything next year, and we just,
And then all you have is the maintenance cost of it moving forward.
yeah, I just, because
It's not a
I've
rotten
heard
idea.
so much about the recreation
You're not
program
mobilizing
from
volunteers 3 different
citizens,
times.
and that's one of the service things that people really talk about. So that's what
Now,
I'm struggling
if you wanna do all
with.
3 at once, I'm in concurrence that we should look at it out of fund balance.
I'm on board.
I'm
Yeah.
on board to put that in there.
Do
It's
it.
good.
Okay,
And we
so,
might get a better price if somebody knows they're gonna do 3, the equipment's here,
Well,
get it
you're
done.
absolutely right. I mean,
Yeah.
Would
the
any
clay
of the
becomes
others-
cheaper, everything becomes cheaper the more you buy.
Well, would
So-
any of the other cities be up for doing theirs and also reducing
I
the
don't
cost?
know, I'd
wonder
have
if
to,
you
I have
can
to look into it.
Just have a conversation with
Yeah.
them.
Susan, I have a question that, you know, it states that it's, the title of this is infield renovations, not like, I mean, is this renovations as in we're making it nicer, or we're just making sure it's upkept so
Nicer.
that people can play on it?
Well, yeah, it's like driving a 20-year-old car. When you buy a new one, it's an upgrade, but it's a replacement.
A great
So
analogy.
you're replacing a field. We're not building
my
a new
car is
field.
not.
But
It's
we're
not,
gonna put
you're
it-
not going from a Toyota to a Maserati, you're going from a Toyota to a
But we're
Toyota.
To a
gonna
newer
put
Toyota.
We're gonna
Yeah.
put better quality clay on there, right?
So-
sorry?
We're talking about putting better quality clay.
We are going to do the recreational mix, which is a 60-40 clay mixture, which is what's recommended. You know, when you get into like the 70-30 clay, and like we put at the baseball field at Spruce Creek, that has to be tarped and covered. We do not have the resources to do that on 11 fields. So I would not recommend that we go with more clay. I would say we recommend with the same mixture.
We don't wanna set you up for failure.
Yeah, however, if that's the direction, we'll
No.
do whatever, but we would definitely need to cover those fields if we went any more clay in our mixture, which makes the field harder, which is what our high schools would like and
I'm not
and some
gonna
of those
sit
other
here and
groups.
tell you whether to do 60-40 or 70-30. You need to make those daily maintenance
Yeah.
decisions yourself.
But the mixture's starting over, right? So it's like anything. Add a little bit of milk, a little bit of water, a little bit of milk, a little bit of water. Every year you add a little bit more. It's never going to be the same mixture. So being able to take that off and go back, I think, will be a truer field than what we have right now.
You make
Very
it sound
good.
like you bake a pretty dry cake.
Yeah, definitely not a baker.
The only thing I wanted to point out in terms of renovations and doing these things, we have 11, and we're going to eventually come back and do more. The caveat I just want council to think about is using fund balance for this, is it really is an ongoing cost, whether you do 3-year or 1 year, whatever you want. If it makes its way into the operating budget and we continue doing it year after year and it's a regular maintenance item, we don't have to come back to you again unless prices increase significantly.
Or
Um,
Yeah, but the reality of it
The
is that's
first
something
time
that
you
can be
put
cut.
it in, it's gonna incur the highest cost.
Right.
The
We're
highest
talking
original
about
cost.
maintenance dollars moving forward,
Right,
which
so
makes
if-
sense out of general fund.
Right, because if you use fund balance, then in 3 years, we're gonna come back to you and say, okay, we need the additional 3. It may fall down on the priority and those fields may lie
No,
foul.
because Susan's gonna take very good care of them once we have those.
No, I mean the ones that we haven't done. Like in 3 more years when we wanna do the next 3, we may not have the fund balance to do that because somebody else may
We'll
have
make
higher
that
priority.
decision at that time.
Okay.
Not all of our fields get used the same way all the time either.
Yeah, it's your decision. I just wanted to make sure you got that distinction between the 2 funding.
All right,
evidence.
let's backtrack, because Alan's tried to talk us out of a decision we've already made.
Just final comment.
That all 5 of us had agreed out of fund balance to do it all at once.
Yes.
Yes.
With the caveat
With
that
the
you're gonna
3, yeah.
do your best to do what you normally do, is to come in with the best price.
Well, but I was under the impression we were going to a 70-30. That's why and that's where I might not make it to the end of
Understood.
supporting that because of that.
Yeah.
You know, if we're just gonna get the same product, might be better off at the start, but at the end of the day, it's gonna be the same thing we got. You know,
Again,
I was looking at upgrading it to what our high school guys are doing.
Yeah, so we have one of those, right? We have it at Spruce Creek Road Park. The Gail Emeron Field has that clay mixture on it.
Mhm.
It takes a lot of use, and we have a partner that helps us maintain it. We just don't have the resources. I would have to come back to you next year and say, we need more staff, and I don't think that's...
Just to cover the fields
That's
that
where
were,
we're
yeah,
going, so...
yeah.
Like I said, well, we can be any Parks and Recreation department you guys want us to be.
Right.
You know, it's just want to be honest with you and let you know why we wouldn't want to do that.
So you do a
Maybe
great
you could
job.
do like a 64-36.
A little bit of sand, a little bit of clay, a little bit of milk, okay.
I've known to compromise.
All right. All right, we're in the non-general fund items. Actually, when I say non-general fund, the IT, these are funded across different income streams. IT roughly, these items are all at about 65% impact. Do we want to consider them all at once? Do you want to take a look at them separately?
I think that
Let's take a look at them separately if
Okay.
we're not sure. Information
First 2
security.
you should probably look at together, because if you do the position, you'll need the extra training.
I'm sorry?
So the first one there, if you get the security administrator, you'll need the extra cost, so those 2 should be together.
Okay, so the first 2 are combined.
Yes, sir.
Let's take a look at that. Information security administrator, along with the additional costs related to that position, the first 2 items. Comments or questions?
so only 65% of that would come out of general fund.
Mm-hmm. Because of the different cost centers that would be using it. So if there are no other questions or comments, let's start. Marilyn?
I was just, sorry, I was just making we've gone to 6-month positions or 6-month funding for the other positions, so I'm suggesting maybe we want to do that here.
I have no problem with that.
So then I could say yes to 6 months.
Okay, well then I will modify the question. If it doesn't work, then we'll look at it differently. First 2 items, Marilyn says yes to 6 months. Chase?
I'm not ready at this point. I want to get a little bit more.
Not ready,
More detail
okay.
on that.
Drew?
I'm gonna be a no on this one for this year.
Okay. Scott?
Not ready.
I concur, I'm not ready as well. We'll leave it as is for now.
I definitely want to come back to it though.
Yep. Well, we have to, because
Yeah.
3 of us are not ready. Multi-factor authentication. Scott?
Is that something we can do out of fund balance?
I don't think, that's not real big dollars, but I don't think that that's real wise there, because
If it's not big dollars, that's why I would wanna do it.
I know, but I'm also thinking that you have to administer it as well.
Jim, is that an annual subscription? Is that, or is that just a one-time for the hardware?
So generally, you'll see a larger one-time implementation and then an annual cost for some of the maintenance. So I don't have the number of what the next year maintenance would be on that, but I anticipate there'll be some costs on the tail ends of the years.
Okay, so there'll be continuing costs.
Yes.
In general,
But
when
not at that, not at that number.
No, should not be.
At a greatly reduced number or moderately reduced?
I'll have to get back to you.
In-
I can provide
that's,
that number.
I'm not gonna, okay, that's
Yep.
fine.
Yeah,
In,
for
in
that-
general,
for that
when you're
reason,
looking
I'd
at hardware and software maintenance, it's generally 10 to 20% of the original purchase price.
Yeah.
Okay.
It varies
So
depending on what
few
you're
hundred
buying.
bucks okay.
So I would do fund balance on that one there.
Drew?
It's such a, I mean, even if you group them together, we're talking a little over 10 grand. I'm just gonna be outright yes.
No, we're just looking at the
I-
authentication.
No, I know, but yeah,
I know what
I'm
you're
a
looking
yes.
at there, but,
Yeah.
Chase?
I want to be fair. I need more education on this. I don't want to say no or yes, so I'll be a not ready right now, so.
Okay. Marilyn?
I'm a yes. I'm open to whether fund balance or general operating.
I'm a yes, but I tend to want to leave that in the general fund, knowing that some of those dollars are going to flow forward, which means
You got
we're
three
kind of on the
yeses.
fence.
You got 3 yeses.
You got
with
3
fund
yeses.
balance and not ready.
Drew, Marilyn, and you, and yourself.
Well, and of course, any of these can be revisited, so.
Yeah.
We have a yes. Increased access control for data center? Comments?
Give me a brief explanation of that one again.
Sorry, what?
Can I get a brief explanation of that one again?
Jamie's coming up.
Probably
Sorry,
just
sorry,
camp out in
Jamie.
the first seat for a few minutes.
Just adding
That's
a
okay.
new security.
Yes, so currently on our data center, which is where we house all of our hardware that maintains our equipment, there is a key-coded door like that.
Gotcha.
We would like to do a door access control, which will allow us better auditing of who's coming and going in
This
that
is a
area.
fund balance thing? I mean, I would imagine it would have some recurring
This would be a
cost,
one-time
but-
cost.
One time?
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
thank you.
Marilyn?
Fund balance.
Drew?
Yes.
Chase?
Fund balance.
Scott?
Fund balance.
Right.
Concur, fund balance.
Nice suggestion on this fund balance, Scott. Allows me to give a little bit more positive responses tonight.
And with the city
Who
of New
says?
Help.
You agreed.
They're all tax dollars.
Oh, I'm just.
The taxpayers are paying for it, whether it's fund balance or ad valorem.
True, and I'm just saying yes
They
tonight.
already paid for it. That's the
Yeah,
difference.
that's what I'm thinking.
It's already come out of their pocket.
AV cameras for annex training room for remote council broadcasts and the like. Comments or questions?
Slide it to 2021.
So you would be a no for this year?
That's correct, I'm a no.
Okay. Chase?
No.
Scott?
Yeah, I'll go no and punt that one a year.
Drew?
I'm okay with passing for 1 year on this one.
Well, I guess then I can just change. I don't have to be the naysayer. I'll go with no and punt for a year as well. I'd still like to see that happen.
Yeah.
I think it's essential. Diversity and Inclusion Officer. Fund 504. Comments, questions? Okay.
I think Jamie pointed out that this person will do first-line investigations for HR on ADA, which is a hot-button issue, and some of the other ticklish HR issues. However,
Yeah,
I
don't
just
does
feel
that,
like-
How often does that come up?
well,
I
the
don't
thing
know
is,
the
they're
answer to
very
that.
intensive, labor-intensive when they do come up, But I sort of feel like with everything else that I think is higher priority, I'd like to
When you
push
put it on the
off.
bigger scale?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Well, Marilyn, we'll start with you.
No.
Chase?
No.
Scott?
No.
Drew?
I'm not ready on this one.
Not ready. And I'm a no. And Lynn Stevens wants a forklift. I got a feeling I know what direction Scott's going on this one.
I'd like to buy part of the forklift over 4 years. In the 5th year, we'll fund putting it all together. But I don't want to do fund balance all of the 5 years. I'd like to kind of.
Can I hear from
So
Lynn?
you're gonna amortize it. You wanna see the amortization table on that?
I think this is an excellent use of fund balance.
Can I-
Drew?
can- I just
I'm
wanted
sorry,
to
you got a
ask-
question first?
Yeah, I just wanted to hear from Lynn again. If I recall, this was something very imperative.
Can this
that
be
you
used
need.
to
I
move
just wanted-
generators?
Actually, yes. It will be used to move some generators on and off trailers.
Can you just go over this one more time for me?
Yes, sir. Right now, our fleet maintenance group does not have a forklift. They have to constantly borrow a forklift from the utilities warehouse. And oftentimes utilities is using theirs. So unfortunately, I think many times the staff tries to brute force it, and that's a dangerous situation in my opinion.
And I can neither confirm nor deny that in past times I have seen other pieces of equipment being utilized as a forklift, but it's not designed to be used as a
Correct.
forklift.
But there's a lot of heavy lifting in the fleet maintenance shop. We also get a lot of deliveries in the fleet maintenance shop for both stormwater. All stormwater utilities come into that public works facility, have to be offloaded there. We get concrete boxes, large loads of pipe delivered there. There is no forklift. We'd like a
They
forklift.
can't lift it on their own.
We really would like a forklift. We're
I'll put it
begging
in
for a
fund balance.
forklift.
So you say no to the forklift, but you better up the workers' comp allocation?
The insurance.
I didn't say no to the forklift.
Any other questions or comments while we have our celebrity chef judge up here?
Can I try forklift out?
No.
To drive the
No,
forklift, you have
just
to
say
be
no.
forklift certified. So you'd have to be certified to drive.
I was doing a thing from the office, like Scott, and of course nobody would've got that one.
I think he was volunteering actually to go and get the training at his expense so he can help out.
All right, let's get this moving. Start over. Scott?
Fund balance.
Drew?
I'm good with fund balance.
Chase?
Also fund balance.
Marilyn?
Fund balance.
I concur. Okay.
What was the tally on the diversity inclusion officer?
No, and Drew was not ready, so that was a no.
Thank you.
I'm gonna ask for a couple things. One, we still have that CIP list out there, and we talked about those things, funding them as fund balance becomes available or not. Some of the things we spent some fund balance on tonight, we don't know where we are with, over our reserve requirement. So it would be difficult to say the things that we want to go ahead and do with fund balance now, or wait till we get funding later, until some of that math is done. So I think we could have a conversation about that on Tuesday. The second thing, and y'all chime in if you agree or disagree with anything I'm saying. I know that you're going to give us an unofficial update on the running total, where we are from a millage and a percent right now. If you could do me a favor, if you'd also send us via email this updated spreadsheet so that we can all see and let that ruminate a little bit, because there are some horse trading decisions that we all make in our own minds. It's like, I really like that, and we said no to it, maybe we'll come back to it if I'm willing to give this. So I'd like to make sure that all 5 of us have that updated spreadsheet along with the tallies that we have tonight.
Yeah.
And then lastly, of course, we will know what our gap is between where we are projected for millage rate, above, below, even, this, that, or whatever. We're gonna set a max on Tuesday. Very seldom have we ever, that max been where we've been at. But at the end of the day, as all this gets processed, I think we still need to challenge the city manager, see what else is out there, and also look for other efficiencies as well as we set that target for them on Tuesday. Does anybody agree or disagree with that, or need to add anything?
A question on the 317, Mayor, if you between now and Tuesday could take a look at that and say, absolutely, we don't want these, we can clean that up. And I think that might help the decision process on Tuesday as well.
Okay.
Well, I could offer number 8, I-95 gateway signage, take that off the list. It's desirable, I think it makes us look good, but we got other important things that
We actually
we
workshopped
need.
that.
I know, and quite
was-
honestly, I saw that
A
and
bunch of money on it.
I have a series of thoughts about that.
Okay. We can have those conversations on Tuesday
Yeah.
with that list.
Oh, okay, I thought that was an easy one to decide to get rid of.
I don't, well, I don't want to get rid, I don't think it is, because I know we're also getting money from the state to do it too. So,
Ah, okay.
And we've already spent quite a bit of money on that one.
Mhm.
'Cause that one's
Well,
all
you haven't
government.
lost that work, you're just not taking it to the logical conclusion in 2020.
But we
with
can
that
use
in
it.
mind, be ready with that to talk about it on Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
We'll knock that list on Tuesday as well. What does our running total look like right now, Alan?
Well, I was kind of going down and putting in the consensus, so I didn't take out any of the money. Did you guys take out any of the money yet?
Can we look at that and send it to you tomorrow?
Yeah,
Mayor?
just so.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just make sure it's right. rather
Do you
than
want me
just-
to run through what I've got here on the sheet just to make sure I counted the votes right, and that way we'll know we'll get the numbers right when we send it back to you?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
She's
Okay.
got
All right.
I think you wrote it down, all five of
Yeah,
us up here wrote it down,
All right.
Robin wrote it down.
Yeah.
I know
It's-
you
we
wrote
know
it
what
down,
it is.
And
He
Alan,
knows
if
what
you
it
got it
is.
wrong, believe me, we're gonna tell you.
All right.
And that's just the people I know that wrote it down.
I would like to thank the council for your perseverance, and we're trying to get this right, and we'll improve every day, but thank you for your time and your comments, and we look forward to the rest of the budget season and doing it right.
Okay,
Which is winding down.
so, well, I think,
We got a ways to go yet.
yeah, I was gonna say, you
Yeah.
think it's winding down.
It'll be here before we know
So
it.
you're gonna be able to send us all that stuff tomorrow?
This spreadsheet should be very easy to send you tomorrow.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I certainly would like to know what our preliminary tally is. Knowing that, I know that there's some rounding and some other factors that go into it that'll change. But I very much would like to know what our moving target is on millage rate as soon as possible. And not Tuesday afternoon when we meet Tuesday night. I need to know what that moving target is. Because going into the weekend, if I'm not satisfied with it, I want to be able to take a look at things that I said yes to. And I don't want to do that Tuesday night. I need to be prepared.
Yes,
We-
sir.
Do we all agree?
Yes.
Yes, the other comment I would make is, from my perspective, having looked through the budget and seen all the line items, I think the department directors know where they can squeeze, and so I would even be happy to see a reduction in some of this.
I think when we challenge Jake, that's where it's gonna come
Yeah,
from.
I think at the end of the day, I trust the department directors to know, you know, I've spent this last year, but okay, if I really wanna do this
Yeah.
over here and I only got this many dollars, I'll shift this. That's the sense I've gotten when I've talked with the department directors, that you know where and how to squeeze.
They ought to.
Yeah.
If they're worth their salt, and I think they are. Okay. Closing comments. Scott?
Nothing
Group?
more. have plenty of comments next Tuesday, I'm sure.
Marilyn?
My only would be a question. Jake had talked about that he might set up a portal or take citizen comments so that then they could be answered by the department directors and put out there so it would be less onerous when we actually have our hearings. I know that Tuesday is only the trim, but I just wanted to remind you and him that if you're gonna do that, it would be good to get that in play and then also maybe put on the water bills. Hey, look, if you've got budget issues, you can go to, you know, www, Port Orange, this little section, and ask your question and you'll get a reply and everybody can see it, so maybe it'll save the number of questions.
Chase, any comments or questions? I've just got one. This, in my 9 years of doing this as part of this council, as part of the city, and working with a number of different individuals up here, number of different individuals with staff, knowing that we still have a ways to go was one of the very best workshops I've ever been a part of. And that's because everybody was prepared and everybody brought something to the table and everybody was honest with their feelings. And if you're not ready to make a decision, we said that as well. And I want to thank everybody up here, and I definitely want to thank our staff. When we have workshops like this where I can't necessarily tell the passage of time until I look up at the clock because we've been working and productive, I can't think of anything better. So thank you all.
You're welcome.
Well done.
With that, we'll see you all Tuesday night.
Thank you, Mayor.